Chapter 349, Mentality Change. Chapter 349, Mentality Change. Xiang woke up worried. The quiet night hadn't completely disappeared yet. The first ray of the morning sunlight slowly sprinkled on his bare upper body. The daylight was like water bringing along a feeble flow of power that seeped into his body, moving toward his heart. Peacefully raising his head to look at the sunrise, Xiang felt quite calm and natural. The auras of the group of Chenduo and Dong Fanghe had been transformed into a strange, mysterious power. They then fused. With the profound qi of his body, pouring into his two arms, helping the right arm complete the mutation, letting his left arm turn into red-purple hue and be heavier than 1,000 kilograms. A part of the strange power infiltrated into the martial spirit, making it even more mysterious, being able to absorb solar energy. Looking at the morning sunlight, Xiang remembered what had happened in the chasm battlefield. In the peculiar desert there, he had gotten the sun-refined spirit. Even the mysterious giant sword in the blood vein ring also came from there. The mutation that time had made his martial spirit was different from before. After having returned to the endless sea from the chasm battlefield, whenever the sun shined at noon, he felt that his body was absorbing its energy. However, that feeling hadn't been quite clear, which made him think that it might be just an illusion. Right now, he was not the same anymore. The sunlight shone on his upper body, bringing along the solar energy which penetrated his body and went into his heart, making him heat up. This feeling was real, not just an illusion. Just like that, he held his head up looking at the sky, quieted down his mind, and meditated. After a long while, he was certain that under the strange power, in addition to his ability to absorb the star power, he could also begin to absorb sun power. It was obvious that his ability to absorb the sun power was still far less than Tang Yuannan's. It couldn't even be compared with a majority of the three god sect's disciples. He understood that point well, but he still felt extremely magical and incredible. In the three god sect, no one had ever absorbed both the star power and the sun power in the three god sect. No one had ever heard of it. Xiang silently stood up and tried to swing his left arm, feeling a tremendous power hidden inside. His eyes brightened. The mutation had spread to his arms. As long as he continued killing, he believed that his whole body mutation would be completed very soon. At that time, every part of his body would be full of horrendous power, and he would be much stronger than he is now. The profound qi ancient tree in the swirl in his abdomen still continued to disappear. However, when he stood up, the swirl, which had been created by the fusion of the ice-cold flame, the Holy Spirit God, and the earth flame, began to spin again. A large amount of the sky and earth aura spread out from that swirl and was transformed into the new profound qi, pouring into the strange space. That strange space was the source of fundamental weapons. Xiang knew that the proliferation of the sky and earth aura was related to the Holy Spirit God. This strange living formation had the ability to gather the nearby sky and earth aura. It in itself could be considered the condensed pure energy body. With its existence, Xiang no longer had to worry about not being able to gather the sky and earth aura. The sun was getting sultry. Xiang stood in a daze for a while, indifferently glancing at the two beautiful bodies. After that, he started the star wings and flew up to the sky. Underneath Star Island, in a white stone chamber, laid a star ocean diagram. The sun god Tang Yuannan slightly bent down while talking to the moon god Ouyang Lu Shuang. The moonlight fully covered the entire body of the moon god. Fluttering mist brought other people a fantasy of the unreal creature like a fairy in a dream. She silently looked at each lifelike star in the star ocean diagram, listening to Tang Yuannan's narration without stating her own opinions. She seemed to be thinking of something. The star island had long been barren. There was no one on the island, many formation techniques had mostly vanished. No one had been allowed to enter this place in the past, even the three god sect's disciples didn't dare to step on the island. However, to demon dwellers, this constraint was invalid. The divine craft demon god suspended in the sky above the moon island and star island. Plenty of demon dwellers riding demon beasts were flying around. Many of them had come to Star Island but found nothing, and thus, they had left the island. No one knew that under Star Island was a hidden star palace. It stayed hidden deep inside Star Island and was protected by 12 formation techniques, which could prevent souls from exploring and blockading. Even Demon King Kaiyang didn't know the existence of the hidden Star Palace, and thus, he couldn't know that the Sun God and the Moon God were right beside him. As the Three Gods sect has survived and stood firm for thousands of years without collapse, they had become the strongest force in the endless sea, which meant their background was not ordinary. Temporarily, let the core disciples hide in the secret land on the seabed. Do not go out for a while. Keep contacts with the leaders of other forces in the endless sea, and discuss the plan to deal with the demon dwellers together. The moon god's voice was clear but cold. She turned her back toward Tang Yuannan and said, "As for Shiyang, just pay attention to his whereabouts and do not let him out of sight. Presently, all forces are searching for him to kill him. This is a danger but also an opportunity. If he can survive, he is then qualified to be crowned as the Star God. If he dies, you have to inform me immediately. I will have to take his heart back to preserve the Star Martial Spirit's heritage." Tang Yuannan's face became solemn. He slowly nodded. Just by borrowing a Sky Realm warrior's body, Kaiyang has such a powerful strength. If he comes here on his own, not many people in the Endless Sea can defeat him. I have just entered the Spirit Realm, and I need more time to reinforce it. Don't disturb me during this time. The Moon God continued. Tang Yuannan silently nodded and didn't say anything more. He bent down to conduct a ceremony as his figure gradually disappeared. On the seashore of the deserted island, 10 mummies were floating in the sea, including males, females, demon dwellers, and human beings. A fleet of 3 20-meter-long ships quietly docked on the shore. The ships were all empty. The heads of 2 strange demon beasts had been smashed with blood splashing everywhere. The air faintly smelled of blood that permeated the air. Blood was also spread all over the sea. A majestic figure with 2 wings on its back was drifting around in the air for a while and then dashed away. A long while later, in a small city under Dongfang family's command, a person appeared in the largest brothel named Drunk Dreams. He ordered 3 plump girls to serve him and solve the savage aura on his body. At night, he quietly left the brothel and reappeared in the sea that demon dwellers and warriors haunted. He would be merciless no matter which one it was. He would slaughter everyone he saw. Among these people, if there were beautiful women, he would take them away to the brothel to enjoy them. Time flew. Half a month had passed. In just half a month, the number of endless sea warriors and demon dwellers that had died in his hands was more than 100, including 7 or 8 Sky Realm warriors and more than 10 Nirvana Realm warriors. Warriors of the endless sea and demon dwellers that died in his hands would become mummies floating here and there, sometimes 1 or 2, sometimes more than 10. The quantity was different every time. As long as they saw those mummies, both the endless sea's forces and the cruel demon dwellers would all be terrified to the point that their bodies felt a chill. They subconsciously observed all directions to see if that person was in the vicinity or not. That person was ruthless and cold. His fame had spread out among the entire endless sea. Regardless of whether it was demon dwellers or warriors of the endless sea, they all considered him the most terrible opponent, like a lurking cunning beast in the dark. On the deserted island, in a dark stone cave, a naked person with dark red eyes and a ferocious face was gasping for breath. Meanwhile, a female demon dweller of Dragon Horn clan was bouncing on his body. In the Dragon Horn clan, males were ugly and ferocious, but females were very appealing and mesmerizing. Although they all belonged to the Dragon Horn clan, the appearance of males and females were totally different. If it weren't that all of them had horns on their heads, no one would think they were from the same tribe. Beside him, 2 hot females of the Dragon Horn clan were quietly lying on the ground, still displaying a look of satisfaction, but not breathing anymore. Half an hour later, he roared like a wild beast while his majestic body trembled. When his whole body vibrated, his upper body emitted red-purple light. Each of his sturdy muscles, which were as hard as steel, were full of tremendous power that mesmerized that female. However, right at this moment, the female of the Dragon Horn clan suddenly reacted. Her eyes were flooded with crazy hatred as her sharp nails quickly stabbed his neck. Bop bop bop. That female's fingernails all burst out, Her hand bones were also fragmented while her face was still overwhelmed with consternation. Her lower body struggled as her long limbs seemed to be about to explode. At the moment when the energy was spreading, she suddenly screamed in human language, "Go to hell, crazy brat." The male sitting on her revealed a ridiculing trace on his face. He then concentrated his power, forcefully pressing it into the female who was lying under him. The female's body was instantly frozen, turning into a sculpture as her amorous face remained. Suddenly, something bounced up from his heart. He immediately stood up, took a gown out of the storage ring which was bound around his waist, and then went out of the gloomy cave with his bare upper body. There was a noble, beautiful woman in her snow-white clothes outside the cave. Her eyes were as beautiful as the autumn water, which flashed up with profound mysteries. On her back was a pair of snow-white wings, which were around 5 or 6 meters long, quietly dangling just above the ground. Chapter 350, My Way. Chapter 350, My Way. Master, a beautiful woman was standing in front of the cave entrance with a complicated face. She called out gently. With her realm, she could immediately sense that there were 3 corpses in the cave just with one quick glance. She also knew what had happened to them. The male with his bare upper body was much stronger than an average person. His body was as hard as steel and was filled with power that could charm many beauties. "What are you here for?" Xiang's face darkened while his soul consciousness spread out, covering the deserted island. After having realized that it was only Yuru, his face relaxed a little bit, but he was still vigilant and said, "Your wings race is now one of the Demon Dwellers' branches. When Demon Dwellers invaded the Snow Dragon Island, perhaps they didn't give you a hard time?" Yuru revealed a smile and nodded. "Demon Dwellers haven't troubled us indeed." "How did you find this place?" "It is not me who found it. It is the 3 people of Yi Tianmo's group. The Snow Dragon Island is not far away from here. Yi Tianmo's group and you have a soul connection. They have the ability to join souls. Therefore, within this short distance, as soon as you appeared here, they could already sense you." "Why are you here then?" "Master." "You still call me master? Our oath is not that cheap." Xiang was silent, his eyes glinted with a trace of irony. Sai, the matriarch of the White Wings clan, Yuru, slightly released a sigh and sadly said, "After you left, something came up on the Snow Dragon Island. When Demon Dwellers occupied the island, we knew our true identity. It turns out that the 2 races have bonded with Demon Dwellers." Xiang frowned and quietly looked at her. "They are assimilated." Yuru let out a sigh once again. "Many pagans have shown their loyalty toward Demon Dwellers after they knew their identity, especially when Demon King Bozan appeared and used demon aura covering the entire Snow Dragon Island. Through absorbing the demon aura, many of our pagans realized that their bodies could adapt well with the aura, which helped increase their power significantly. Bozan will probably enter the Endless Sea. It is his white bone's true body. However, even if Daishan and I unite, we are not a match. Bozan's mightiness has frightened our 2 tribes' pagans. After he revealed our identity and released demon aura penetrating the Snow Dragon Island, our pagans have benefited a lot from it, and thus, the situation on the island has quickly changed." Xiang's face slightly changed. "Although Daishan and I are the patriarch and the matriarch of the Black Wings clan and the White Wings clan, we no longer have control of the situation. After realizing the transformation in their bodies, our pagans have considered themselves demon dwellers and started having hatred toward humanity. It has been challenging for us to restrain them." Yuru said reluctantly. "Did you and Daishan gain any benefits from the demon aura?" Xiang's face was sullen, silently sensing for a moment and suddenly sneered, "How come I can feel that you are much stronger than before?" Yuru nodded, forced a smile and said, "That's right. Daishan and I couldn't resist the enchantment, and thus our strengths have substantially increased. By absorbing demon aura to refine our bodies, we have had a big harvest indeed." "So, what did you come here for?" Xiang said indifferently. "I come here to tell you that you shouldn't return to the Snow Dragon Island. The White Bones truth body of Demon King Bozan was on the island. You are not his match. Once you appear, he will kill you immediately." Yuru advised Xiang with a heavy face, "Master, your potential is limitless. I think that your achievements in the future will far surpass those of Kaiyang and Bozun. However, before having that ability, you should. We all know how their abilities are now. Xiang frowned but didn't say anything. Leave the endless sea. It is too chaotic here. Someone will find you sooner or later. Yuru looked at him and advised, the fact that we have followed to serve you before actually came from our sincerity. Even after the demon dwellers invaded the Snow Dragon Island, we still wanted to find a chance to take our people and leave there. Unfortunately, we have underestimated the power of Demon King Bozun. Currently, all tribes are assimilated. We have no other ways. After a short pause, Yuru continued, anyway, we cannot give up our people. Xiang was stunned and then nodded after a long while. His face regained the calmness while he said indifferently, you can go. I will remember your good will of coming here to inform me. From now on, you and the demon dwellers should get along well. Perhaps it is the best way for you. I understand it. Master, please leave Endless Sea. The Corpse Soul Bridge is almost complete. At that time when the three worlds can connect, the Endless Sea's warriors cannot withstand the demon dwellers' invasion. I will leave but not now. Xiang contemplated a little bit and then beamed a faint smile. I haven't killed enough. Yuru was startled and bewilderedly looked at Xiang, feeling his malevolent intent. She then shifted her eyes to the three dead bodies in the cave and was stunned for a moment. After a long time, Yuru suddenly said, Master, your murderous intent is too strong. You seem to enjoy the killing. You have fallen in a possessed by the devil state. Xiang was still calm, shook his head, slightly laughed, and said, it is an evil way to you, but it is the way of my heart. Yuru was astonished. Her eyes were full of inexplicable suspicion. Her soft body gradually flew up, turned into a white dot, and disappeared into the horizon. 10 minutes later, Yuru stopped in the middle of a cluster of white clouds. Diaishan was holding He Qingman in one hand and bowed his head looking at the deserted island below with a cold face. I have told him everything. Yuru released a sigh. According to his attitude when we were talking, he will not go to the Snow Dragon Island, but he will not leave the Endless Sea soon either. Diaishan nodded. I knew that he would do so. Yuru was surprised. Diaishan didn't explain anything, shifted his eyes toward He Qingman's gloomily beautiful eyes and said, he is there right on that deserted island. I can let you go now. You choose the destination for yourself. Let me down on that deserted island. He Qingman pondered for a while, and then her eyes suddenly became determined. Little girl, it has not been easy for us to protect your life, and you still want to go down there now? Yuru asked with doubt. Currently, either demon dwellers or endless sea warriors are hunting him down. Going with him is not different from finding death. He Qingman nodded. Diaishan frowned and didn't say anything further. He brought He Qingman down to the island and then flew away with Yuru. He Qingman stood alone as her graceful body gently shivered. She then suddenly flew away like a burst of breeze. In front of the cave entrance, Xiang was indifferently looking ahead. Not long after that, He Qingman's prominent figure appeared. Xiang slightly squinted, looking at the beautiful figure that was approaching him. His eyes brightened while he secretly complimented her in his thoughts. It was unknown when He Qingman had reached the Nirvana realm, but her sea of consciousness had formed, and the aura inside her body was vigorous. The wind sound resounded, howling non-stop around her, producing an impressive momentum. What are you doing here? Xiang grunted and coldly sneered. You are lucky to be able to survive on the Snow Dragon Island. Why do you come here? I think you should know my current situation. I have survived because Diaishan and Yuru have regard for you. He Qingman quickly dashed toward Xian and said with a gloomy face, I obviously know your current situation. So why are you here then? I have nowhere else to go. Xiang was silent. Everyone is dead. He Qingman miserably shook her head and held her face, crying, all the people of the He family died when demon dwellers invaded the Kiara Sea. My father, my brothers, and all of my relatives have all been killed. Our fellows have betrayed us. Our houses have been destroyed. In this huge endless sea, we have no place to stay. You tell me, what should I do now? He Qingman was crying and slowly crouching down. Her shoulder slightly shivered as she looked lonely and helpless. How is this related to me? Xiang looked indifferent without any trace of the slightest sympathy. He didn't agree with her nor comforted her. Linda and Xie Shengchuan had been killed right in front of him. The Yang family in the demon area probably have more bad things than good things. He didn't know if Yang Mu's group was still alive in the chasm battlefield. It seemed that there was no good ending for people who were with him. Thus, his originally calm mind had a subtle change. When he had arrived in the endless sea, he had gained a lot but also lost a lot. Watching the people beside him die one by one, he felt regretful at heart. If he hadn't come to the endless sea, perhaps all these things would not have happened. After going through many things, he realized that if he wanted to survive in this world, he had to be stronger than others. Only overriding others would allow him to take control over his fate and not let his beloved ones be bullied. I want to take revenge with you. Tears flooded in He Qingman's eyes, but she raised her head stubbornly, looking at him. Her beautiful eyes were full of hatred while she spoke up with a resolute face. You are not qualified. Xiang coldly shook his head, refusing. Do you remember our bet on the Fire Cloud Island? He Qingman's face was now covered with tears, but she still strongly said, as I have told you, if you saved Xinyang's sister, I would let you see my body. I will fulfill that promise now. As soon as she had finished her words, her clothes fell on the floor, and her perfect snow-white body was exposed under the sun. Chapter 351, Seeking Wealth from Danger. Chapter 351, Seeking Wealth from Danger. Under the sunlight, He Qingman's snow-white body emitted jade-like lights, proudly exposing itself in the air, dazzling others' eyes. Her big, white breasts were flawless. Fragrant grass spread all over her forbidden privates. This mesmerizing posture could make any man stunned and salivate. She was incredibly gorgeous, like a delicate, beautiful piece of art, making others not dare to destroy nor even touch her. She was standing naked in front of Xiang. The appealing and heart-stirring curves of her body were revealed. However, her eyes were dull and miserable, as if they were covered by invisible clouds. It meant that she wasn't in a good mood, as she couldn't find the right direction to go. Xiang was hypnotized as he looked at the perfect naked body in front of him. His eyes flashed up with a hot beam of lust. However, in just a moment, his eyes regained their alertness. He nodded and said, "Very beautiful. Take me with you to kill all the pagans of the short demon tribe, and then I will belong to you. They have exterminated the He family on the Fire Cloud Island." He Qingman let his presumptuous eyes stare at her naked body without a trace of embarrassment. Her eyes were as cold as ice while she spoke. Xiang shook his head and said, "You should go and find Cao Qiudao or Yang Yitian. Only the true hegemony of the endless sea can meet your requirements. They are old men and they have gone through all kinds of experiences in life. Although they are still alive, their minds have been as static as stagnant water." He Qingman forced a smile, but her heart was full of bitterness. Their pursuit was not the same with that of youth. My beautiful face cannot leak into their eyes. After having finished talking, He Qingman bowed down in front of him, crossing her arms so that her breasts slightly bounced, which was extremely mesmerizing. She looked at Xiang and said, "If you promise me, I will let you touch me as long as you do not cross the limit. I will not mind." Her demeanor looked very charming. However, her eyes didn't display any trace of love, but instead, it was still cold and relentless. Xiang released a sigh within his heart and quietly shook his head. The storage ring on his finger flashed up, and a set of rough linen clothes suddenly flew out. He Qingman was surprised as he put the clothes on her and immediately launched the star wings, flying away. Leave the endless sea. The Grace mainland is no longer just a gathering place for warriors. Your heart is dead here. You need to leave so that your heart can rebloom its vitality. Xiang's voice came up from the sky. The tone was full of emotion, as if it was not only to advise her but also to persuade himself. He Qingman's beautiful eyes were overwhelmed with surprise as she looked at Xiang, who had turned into a bunch of lights drifting away. An indescribable feeling churned up in her heart. Being stunned for a while, He Qingman knitted her eyebrows and took off the linen clothes. She then put a set of silk clothes on her mesmerizing body. As soon as she was about to throw the linen clothes, she suddenly thought of something. Her face blushed because of embarrassment. She didn't throw the clothes away but retrieved them to put in the storage ring while beaming a faint smile. Going into the cave, looking at the 3 naked female corpses of the Dragon Horn clan's pagans, and seeing the trace of teeth on their bodies, she obviously understood what had happened. He Qingman was a little startled when she saw the satisfaction on their faces. She had heard about the sexual drives of demon females. People had also said that it was very rare to find males who could satisfy their needs. People had even said that they needed 5 males taking turns in the battle to be able to satisfy a demon female, making them sublimate. Looking at the 3 girls, He Qingman was secretly scared. Cold Wind Island. This was an island which was shrouded by dark clouds and heavy yin aura all year round. That was the territory of the Jiyu family. Momentarily, it was the temporary residence of the corpse's god sect. On the flank of a tranquil mountain, there were many human-made caves. The corpse's god sect disciples took shelter in those caves. In a cave, the elder of the corpse's god sect, Yin Hai, was sitting on a yin wooden coffin with his eyes closed, gathering yin aura and pouring the yin power of profound qi into the 2 coffins. Yi Hai suddenly opened his eyes as his face became odd. Shriek, shriek, shriek. The sound of nails scratching on wood resounded from the 2 coffins. 2 sky corpses didn't want to be under Yin Hai's control but wanted to get out of the coffins. Yin Hai was startled, immediately took out a yin stone to pass out the news of this abnormality. Not long after that, another 3 figures flew over Yin Hai's cave from another cave. The hierarchy of the corpse's god sect, Qingming, wore a green mask and asked with a cold voice, "Yin Hai, is it true?" Yin Hai bent down to conduct the ceremony and then pointed to the 2 coffins without saying anything. Strange sounds came out from the 2 coffins, giving people a hair-raising feeling. However, the 3 people who had just arrived were not scared, they even displayed joy on their faces. "That little rascal is nearby." Qingming snorted and slightly grinned. It seems that he couldn't wait anymore. He will take action this time for sure. Maybe his target is here. The Queen of Sky and the King of Earth of the Yin-Yang Wonderland harumphed and nodded together while their eyes were as cold as ice. "We have spent a lot of effort to catch this little rascal, but it has been unable to find him. Now, thanks to these 2 sky corpses, we have found out his whereabouts." The Queen of Sky licked her pink lips and said, "In just a short time, more than 30 disciples of Yin-Yang Wonderland have died in his hands. Even my 2 most favorite female disciples have been tortured to death. He has indeed considered the endless sea a piece of meat for him to mutilate and release his anger. I, of course, want to kill him this time. He will die this time guaranteed." The King of Earth coldly snorted, "Even if he has comparable power to Ma Chidun's, we can still destroy him with the 3 of us united. Don't worry. The King corpse is still under the ground, and we are well prepared this time. As long as he dares to enter this Cold Wind Island, he has no way back." Qingming said with a grin and said, "I want to absorb all of the forces in his body until he leaves this world and dies." The Queen of Sky clenched her teeth and then laughed out loud as if she was an excited, bloodthirsty animal. "Yin Hai, you stay here and don't make any move that makes him suspicious. The 3 of us will be concealing ourselves close by." Qingming contemplated a little bit before giving his commands. "I understand." The 3 God Realm warriors quickly discussed together and then flew out to find a place to hide, secretly waiting. Yin Hai continued observing the coffins, reaching out to touch them, and said with a low voice, "It's time to pay." In a sea near the Fire Cloud Island, the formerly calm sea suddenly churned. On the seabed, a person was swimming like a fish toward Fire Cloud Island. He raised his head up looking at the sky and used his soul consciousness to check his surroundings. 2 strange surging flows of energy came up from the fire cloud wind which seemed to be calling him to come over. After meditating for a while, he used his fastest speed to reach to the edge of the Fire Wing Island, but didn't rush to get on the island right away. Instead, he stopped and observed everything around him for a moment. After a while, he quietly got on the shore, looked at the black clouds on the sky, and then slowly closed his eyes, sensing the volatility of the sky and earth aura to see if there were any abnormalities. He realized the existence of the 2 sky corpses, which meant that Yin Hai, the elder of the corpse's god sect, was also on the island. In the past, if he had known that there were Sky Realm warriors there, he would not have dared to take risks to enter the place. However, as the Holy Spirit God, the ice, cold flame, and the earth flame were currently in the fusion state, he would not be scared but be even more excited. His martial spirit was in the mutation process, which had been covering his arms and his upper body. After killing some more Sky Realm warriors and then using their pure tremendous aura to break through, he was certain that he could complete the mutation of his lower body. Therefore, Sky Realm warriors were indispensable supplements for him. Recently, as his upper body had completed the mutation, it seemed that he couldn't bear the strength of his body anymore. When every part of his body was mutated, he felt that the heaviness was like a mountain. The bones of his lower body seemed to be out of his bearing. Every time he moved, his legs produced abnormal sounds. He had to complete the mutation quickly. Otherwise, his body would become weirder. This imperfect form would affect his strength in a battle. After days and nights passed by, the forces that had been created by the fusion of the Holy Spirit God, the ice-cold flame, and the earth flame would slowly be gone. This was something that he couldn't stop. He guessed that it would not be long until the integration of these three living forms would be finished. At that time, he would be back to his normal state, not having the ability to kill Sky Realm warriors anymore. Right now, the Endless Sea situation was extremely chaotic. If he lost the power that was comparable with a Sky Realm warrior, his life in the Endless Sea would be miserable, and perhaps he would be pursued and killed. Time was not waiting for him anymore. Looking at the gloomy sky, he clearly knew that the island might be dangerous, but he was determined and ready to take a chance with fate. Seeking wealth from danger, his ruthlessness surged inside his heart. He no longer hesitated, immediately activating the star wings and displaying the starlight, teleporting him near the mountain. "You are finally here." When he appeared, Qingming's cold, fake laughter suddenly came up from the underground. A silhouette leaped up and appeared in front of Xiang. At the same time, the earth thundered, and a hairy ape-like monster appeared. Chapter 352, Using Malicious Tricks to Hurt a Woman. Chapter 352, Using Malicious Tricks to Hurt a Woman. The King Corpse. This hairy monster was around 3 meters tall and was the fundamental foundation of the corpse's god sect and the King Corpse. King Corpses were the highest-level corpse slave. They had the innate ability to use the power of the 5 elements as well as an iron body which was immune to most swords, sabers, and other secret attacking techniques. Each King Corpse had spent tens of thousands of years underground refining the corpse technique and absorbing plenty of corpse aura. Thus, they were one of the most terrible creatures in the world. As soon as the King Corpse appeared, the cold corpse aura, which was as dense as thick litter, spewed out from the underground and gathered by the King Corpse. The Cold Wind Island had another name called Burying Island, which was the ancient burial place of the Jiyu family. All Jiyu family's dead warriors were buried in Funeral Island, and thus, numerous warriors' corpses had been buried in this place. With the typical circumstances that the sunlight didn't reach this place, the corpse aura always stayed hidden in the ground instead of dispersing. Qingming had chosen the Cold Wind Island to be his temporary shelter as he had seen this island's special feature. The King Corpse had sneaked into the ground, absorbing the corpse aura here and quietly cultivating. Just after a few days, it had already had significant improvement. Standing in front of Qingming, the kind corpse showed a very sharp and long fang jutting out from the King Corpse's mouth, while its fingers were like 10 sharpened swords of 1-meter-long nails. A plump corpse aura was like a long earthworm that flew out from those nails and moved constantly, which was inexplicably strange. The King Corpse had white-grey eyes, looked at Xiang in a daze as it seemed to be waiting for Qingming's order. 2 palace masters of Yin-Yang Wonderland also quietly appeared, one in front, one behind, surrounding Xiang. The Queen of Sky Fan Xiong-Yun was wearing purple clothes. Her pants tightly attached to her legs and only covered to just above her knees, exposing her 2 white, jade-like feet. The tight pants revealed her fully round butts and her slim waist. Her firm big breasts were protruding as if they wanted to split out of her clothes, which gave people a fulfilling feeling. With her full red lips, her beautiful watery eyes, and her appealing body, She was laughing out loud, looking at Xiang, who was like a nasty woman indulging in her erotic dreams. The King of Earth was standing behind Xiang, but he didn't say anything. He suddenly sat down, flapping a white fan in his hand, sometimes spreading the fan and sometimes folding it. The fan had a painting of 100 birds surrounding the phoenix on it. He looked like an old scholar with a profound study. Qingming still wore the green mask with yellow fangs. While his body stayed hidden in a loose black tunic, his green eyes were like poisonous snakes that were looking for opportunities to bite other people. Some warriors of the corpse's god sect and the yin-yang wonderland quietly came out, besieging Xiang and coldly watching him. Yin Hai was one of them. He was holding a silver mourning stick. His face was white-gray like death while his mouth revealed a cruel smile. It seemed that he wanted to see how Xiang would die. There were a total of 3 God Realm warriors and more than 10 Nirvana Realm and Sky Realm warriors. As Xiang saw everyone surrounding him, he shuddered while his face became dull and darkened. It was a trap that was reserved for him. He had somehow understood after seeing Qingming's appearance. When the King Corpse, the Queen of Sky, and the King of Earth appeared, his heart felt like it was sinking to the bottom of a glass. He knew that it would be pretty hard to leave this place in one piece. Little brother, as you have killed many men. Of our 2 forces, you seem to be in good shape. Fan Xiangyun smiled indifferently as her soft body swayed with the wind while her breasts were heaving like an earthquake, and her eyes were glistening. Invisible mesmerizing consciousness spread out, which was like a magnetic field covering the entire area. The corpse's god sect's followers and male yin-yang wonderland's disciples surrounding her were like inadequate sexual people being granted stimulating drugs. Their faces and ears were all red, their eyes ignited with a flame of lust, staring at her without a blink, feeling regretful that they couldn't storm forward and give her prominent breasts a bite. Even the King of Earth was also affected. A flame of lust burned up in his eyes while he gasped for breath. Xiang's eyes became dazed. Standing in front of Fan Xiangyun, he suddenly felt the scene around was changing. The surrounding mountains turned into a gorgeous palace, and the ground under his feet became a luxurious carpet. The young heart-stirring woman suddenly appeared beside him. She started opening up the buttons of her clothes. Her belt fell on the ground. Her breath was as fragrant as orchids while her full red lips slightly shivered. Her round breasts protruded, and her eyes were full of deep affection as she wrapped him up tightly. This fascinating scene could stir everyone's lust. It could turn a person into a wild beast as the evil mind churned and swallowed all of his wisdom. Fan Xiangyun smiled tenderly. Her body swayed while she was performing the sacred martial technique of the yin-yang wonderland, ecstasy's dreamland to its extreme. Her laughter and mesmerizing eyes brought Xiang into a dream from which he would never wake up. For those who were nearby, as long as they were men, all of them would be affected. Regardless of whether they were the corpse's god sect's followers who made friends with corpses or male disciples of yin-yang wonderland, even if they were in the sky realm, they would be mesmerized, not knowing who they were, just blankly staring at Fan Xiangyun. Even the King of Earth was slightly affected as his mental state was one level lower than Fan Xiangyun. No wonder he always had to ask for her opinion on important decisions in yin-yang wonderland. Qingming was the only person who wasn't being affected. Qingming. His green eyes were still ruthless without any abnormal change. Queen of Sky, don't tell me that you like him. Qingming looked at her for a while and then spoke up with a hoarse voice, don't waste everyone's time. I will now command the King Corpse to exterminate him so that we can avoid unexpected things. Don't. Fan Xiangyun revealed a faint smile as she excitedly winked at Xiang, covered her mouth and said, as I have said, I want to drain off this little rascal's yang qi until he is dead. Right now, he is in a dream without any sense of autonomy. No matter how I move or touch him, he will not resist, and will only obey me. After having finished talking, she laughed out loud, walked over to Xiang, and started taking off his belt. A trace of disgust flashed across Qingming's eyes. He coldly snorted and said, this little kid is only in the Nirvana realm, so how much benefit will you get even if you can take all of his yang qi? He cut off one of Ma Qidun's arms. There isn't merely just the power of the Nirvana realm in his body. Fan Xiangyun slightly chuckled. Her beautiful eyes became cold, displeasingly glancing at Qingming, If I can completely absorb the chi of this kind of warrior, I will certainly reap great benefits. Qingming, you have to accept this. Don't you want me to live happily? All right, his body is yours, but his other things belong to me. The hierarchy of the corpses god sect frowned and said, as for the passion of secret treasures, we will talk about it later. Fan Xiongyun revealed a broad smile, but her eyes were even colder than earlier. You can take the heaven flame, but don't dream about that god sword. After saying those words, Fan Xiongyun moved to the side of Shiyang, kissed him on his cheek and then pushed him down on the ground. A dark red circle of light suddenly spread out from her storage ring, covering her and Shiyang. It prevented other people from seeing the activities inside. The dream was really magical. No one in this fantasy could differentiate between good and bad, they could just let go of all trauma and show their lingering primitive affections. In this circle of light, Fan Xiongyun laughed out loud, looking at Shiyang. She quietly observed the transformation in his eyes as she gently took off his clothes. When his towering privates were exposed, Fan Xiongyun's smile was even more brilliant. Slowly taking off her clothes, Fan Xiongyun revealed a smile, swayed, and lowered her round butt. Ah! Fan Xiongyun suddenly screamed out loud, her charming face full of panic. She quickly wanted to stand up. The coldness spread out all over her entire body from her lower body, freezing her internal systems. The mysterious chill burst out to every corner and every bone in her body. Shiyang's dazed eyes abruptly glinted with a feeling of emotionless and ruthlessness. Without hesitation, he raised his hands, seizing her prominent white breasts as his handprints launched at the same time. Her breasts were deformed and then burst out. Boom! Fan Xiongyun's naked body pierced through the circle of light, flying straight out. Her straight legs had been frozen, and her lower body had become ice crystal. Her appealing breasts had bloodily burst open. There was no trace of charm in her beautiful eyes, only fear remained. Crazily screaming, she covered her breasts as if she wanted to stop them from exploding. However, blood kept flowing out. Through the slits between her fingers. Trickles of blood dripped on her white body and then ran down her abdomen and instantly formed into ice, which was very peculiar. In the circle of light, Shiyang displayed a cold face, grinned, and put all of his strength in storming straight to Fan Xiongyun, who was still floating in the sky. He wanted to carry on his annihilation. Chapter 353, An Ambush in Adversity. Chapter 353, An Ambush in Adversity. Two great God Realm warriors, Qingming and the King of Earth, who were still waiting for Fan Xiongyun to absorb all of Shiyang's power, suddenly heard her miserable screams. Instantly, they saw her body fly straight up to the sky while blood splashed everywhere. After that, they saw Shiyang grinning like a mighty, bloodthirsty beast and then pierce through the sky like a sharp, pointed sword. He was very ferocious, looking like he had to exterminate Fan Xiongyun at all costs. Do you want to die? The King of Earth shouted ear-piercingly. The white fan in his hand suddenly flew out. The painting of 100 birds surrounding a phoenix seemed to be revived. Different kinds of colorful birds leaped out of the fan, singing out loud all together, and crazily speeding to attack Shiyang. These birds were not big, but their feathers were beautiful, and their flying speed was as fast as lightning. In just a blink, they had already scratched the void, striking Shiyang. Numerous attacking ways like frost, flame, venom, sharp drift abruptly sprayed out from those birds' mouths. Although it was individually not a strong attack, they intertwined together like a spider net, and that was where the extremely powerful attraction force came from. Horrendous power inside Shiyang's body from the three fierce living forms flowed out, while the second sky of rampage and negative forces all churned up in his body. At this moment, he burst out his full power to attack. He was determined to kill or seriously injure that partly frozen body at all cost. The life seal was on one of his hands, while the death seal was on the other hand. Two seals integrated into one, creating the life and death seal that contained vigorous attacking power. However, he suddenly realized that a sky-piercing sucking force was starting up. The power was interwoven together like a quagmire that could entangle all kinds of creatures without the slightest struggle. Blood streamed down the chest of the Queen of Sky Fan Xiongyun. Her breasts had burst open where her sticky flesh and tendons there could now be seen. Her face was dreary, and half of her body was frozen. She was condensing her forces to thaw the frozen part of her body. Xiang rushed toward her from below. Even though he was very close to her, he suddenly stopped and began to sink slowly. The craziness appeared in Fan Xiangyun's beautiful eyes. Her full red lips let out an earth-shaking scream. Her hands on her chest clustered and formed into two light balls. One was purple one, and one was green one, both emitting a vast light. Fan Xiangyun had refined the God Soul to create two small figures inside the two light balls. Those small people had the same appearance as her, but their temperament was completely different. It seemed that the person inside the green light ball had an upright and dignified appearance. The two hands came together, forming a cross as if one was worshipping some illusory god. The figure in the purple light ball had no clothes, always wore a lustful smile, and continually performed provocative dances. Radiant beams from the two light balls burst out. The two people in the balls gradually grew, their eyes were simultaneously looking toward Xiang. Suddenly, the eyes of the two people inside the light balls changed. They exchanged looks before flying out of the light balls like the illusion of ghosts. Their bodies were like smoke, floating out and drifting toward Xiang. Among those two people, one was arrogant righteousness, and the other was lustful evil, which instantly dashed into Xiang's eyes. Xiang's head began violently convulsing. He felt like his body was split into two illusions, each of which had its own consciousness. One was upright and the other one was ruthless. Even Xiang's soul seemed to be divided into two and constantly fighting with each other. Everything happened in a split second. As soon as he felt something wrong, he fell onto the quagmire, which had been created by the flock of birds earlier. All kinds of exotic power instantly penetrated his body. The flock of birds continued to glow, their pointy beaks continually pecked at Xiang. Xiang's thigh appeared with several holes of blood. His body couldn't bear the pecks of those birds' pointy beaks. Blood and flesh mixed and bones could be seen. However, a sharp sound resounded when the birds pecked at his upper body and his two arms. Those parts of his body were not affected at all. The King of Earth was motionlessly sitting on the ground, revealing a cold smile while watching the flock of birds peck at Xiang. Qingming had originally been about to take action, however, when he saw Xiang being constrained by the soul division technique of Fan Xiangyun and the King of Earth, he wasn't in a hurry to assist. He just observed crazy Fan Xiangyun. Fan Xiangyun's body was suspended in the air. Her blood had been frozen into blood crystals. There was no trace of charm left on her face, leaving only cruelty and bitterness. When she waved her hands, the two light balls suddenly burst out and turned into numerous dots of light, flowing into the frozen places on her body and dissolving the ice energy. The illusory THC-CT-MNG-CNH was broken by her miserable, crazy scream. The surrounding disciples of the two sects woke up from the illusion. Everyone surprisingly looked at her and then at Xiang's blood-dripping body. These people didn't know what had happened. However, when they saw Fan Xiangyun's heart-stirring body miserably dilapidated without any trace of beauty left, they were terrified and shifted their eyes toward Xiang with a look of fear on their faces. "Don't kill him right now. I want him to bear the extreme humankind tortures. I want to detain his soul and torture it to death." Fan Xiangyun clamored crazily. Her two pupils shot out the perniciousness, preventing the King of Earth from taking action. Anyone who looked at her in the eyes at this moment would be in a panic. Even the face of the King of Earth was discolored, and he didn't dare to go against her request. The blue and purple dots of light flowed into Fan Xiangyun, making her tremble and the cold air from the ice swirl. She used her power to force the icy power of the ice-cold flame out. God Realm warriors were God Realm warriors after all. Although she had been neglectfully injured, once she reacted, even the power of the ice-cold flame couldn't do anything. Fan Xiangyun with her disheveled hair and bloody breasts was like a banshee showing her fangs and claws as she stormed toward Xiang. At this moment, she was no longer the Queen of Sky who could mesmerize tens of thousands of men. She was now a woman who became crazy because of the humiliation she received. A sign of horror flashed across Xiang's eyes. Two strands of consciousness of the two people who had been created by Fan Xionghyun appeared in Xiang's sea of consciousness and continuously attacked his host soul. His sea of consciousness churned. Under the influence of those two phantoms, the 5 devils in the sea of consciousness crazily came out. However, they didn't stop those two phantoms but stared at Xiang's host soul instead. All of a sudden, the glabella of his host soul, the place between his eyebrows, suddenly jerked as a white eye was cracking his flesh and skin and slowly emerged. In that eye, a group of flames was jumping peculiarly. A flow of air that could kill all creatures and souls came up sharply. At the same time, a bunch of bright silver lights instantly rushed to Fan Xionghyun's 2 strands of consciousness and covered them. Silently, those 2 phantoms' souls perished and scattered, leaving no sound or trace. Xiang's formerly surging sea of consciousness regained its normal state. Xiang awakened. The feeling of being divided in 2 had disappeared. His eyes also restored their consciousness. Right at this moment, Fan Xionghyun, with her disheveled hair, who was showing fangs and claws, abruptly waved her 10 fingertips. A bunch of blue-purple light bloomed, dashing toward Xiang's neck from a close distance. Xiang shuddered. Even before he could react, the Star Martial Spirit activated the starlight. A beam of light flashed while his body was instantly shot 1 mile away and reappeared in front of Yinhai's cave. Confine. The ability of the star, profound qi, yin power, negative powers, and the swirl that gathered the power of the ice-cold flame, the earth flame, and the Holy Spirit God simultaneously flowed out altogether, forming a gravitational field, which was like an invisible prison confining Yinhai. Yinhai's face changed. When he was about to take action with his full power, he suddenly felt his body being controlled. Some unknown force had detained him. His strength became turbid, and there was no way to calm it down. Without the strength to protect himself, Yinhai's body was cut into pieces by the gravitational field. Each piece of flesh, one by one, quickly detached from his body. The gravitational field was a typical secret technique. The more types of power poured in, the greater power it had. Right now, there were 7 kinds of power inside Xiang's body. When they blended, even a Sky Realm warrior like Yinhai wasn't able to bear them, and his body's strength was totally restrained. Xiang knew that if it continued like this, the gravitational field would cut off Yinhai's body until he was dead. He couldn't wait any longer. Xiang threw himself into the gravitational field and launched a blow striking Yinhai's head. After that, he flew in the cave where the 2 yin wooden coffins were placed. His 2 hands had soon condensed the life seals. 7 life seals flew out, merged into one, and then divided into 2 flows, falling into the 2 respective coffins. Aoo wailing. The 2 sky corpses, which were confined inside the yin wooden coffins by a secret technique, suddenly howled up. The yin wooden coffins were broken. The 2 sky corpses got out and appeared in front of Xiang. Xiang was overjoyed. In adversity, he burst into laughter, not able to hide his cheerfulness. Chapter 354, Frenzy. Chapter 354, Frenzy. That year, at burial plot number 93, Xiang printed the life seal on these 2 sky corpses, causing them to mutate. It was like opening their spiritual consciousness, which created a miraculous contact between him and the 2 corpses. After that, he had to think for a long time to understand the magical effect of the life seal as well as the reason why he could have such relationships with the 2 sky corpses. The reason was due to the life seal. Seeing these 2 sky corpses again after many years, he used the life seal once again. However, this time was much different from before because now the life seal had been fused from the power of the 3 great living forms and his profound qi, making the connection between him and the 2 sky corpses stronger. The 2 sky corpses were standing in front of him. Their bleary eyes gradually displayed intimacy, looking at him with astonishment like they were waiting for something. The feeling was fantastic. As Xiang had a feeling that he could freely command these 2 sky corpses, he tried to release a flow of spiritual consciousness and stretched his hand, pointing to the herd of Yin-Yang Wonderland's disciples who were standing opposite him. Expectedly, the 2 sky corpses were like 2 ferocious beasts immediately flying up, rushing straight to the Yin-Yang Wonderland's disciples. The dead aura massively rolled out with amazing momentum. Xiang was overjoyed. When he flew into the gravitational field, the strangling force of this field pulled him into a quiet place where Yinhai's body was still floating around. He then absorbed Yinhai's aura entirely, but because of the gravitational field's existence, Yinhai's body remained floating around behind him. Although the gravitational field existed, it was invisible to the naked eye. Thus, in the eyes of Yin-Yang Wonderland's disciples, Yinhai's floating body looked extremely strange, giving those who were watching it a bone-chilling feeling. Still staying in the gravitational field, Xiang flew to the opposite mountain. He took advantage of the swirl in his body once again. As he could feel the surging power pouring into his body, he calmed his mind and passed his consciousness into the blood vein ring. "Come out!" The strength of Xiang's body burst out with monstrous momentum. He suddenly roared. He wanted to use the insight he had gathered during that time to summon the mysterious giant sword. To do that, he needed to have enough powerful forces. Sure indeed. When his strength had reached a certain level, and his body tendons began to feel pain, the mysterious giant sword finally flew out of the blood vein ring. With one hand clutching the sword, a violent sucking force instantly absorbed the power of his body as strange eyes opened on the sword. Whenever there was an eye opened, more evil aura was added to the sword. It was like an ancient troll who had been dormant for 1 billion years climbing out of that crazily sucking gravitational field. While Xiang was holding the mysterious giant sword, his host soul trembled, and his sea of consciousness was as bright as a mirror, irradiating even the smallest commotions of the energy fluctuations around his body. Each ray of soul consciousness inside the sea of consciousness was like a mirror. Without releasing the soul consciousness, he could still feel the energy fluctuations of the warriors standing around him. The moving trajectory of the energy inside the surrounding warriors became very clear. No matter what kind of martial technique it was, as long as they released their forces, he could recognize them immediately. Xiang's eyes were as bright as a shooting star, splendid and lively. In his eyes, the world now was different from before. The gossamer of the sky and earth corpse aura from underneath the surrounding mountains, including the aura of vegetation and a variety of energy in the world, seemed to be revived. Even naked eyes could see it. It was marvelous. Holding the giant sword and seeing through the sword's opened eyes, he could view the true nature of things, which was like the moonlight exposing itself again after the fog had dissipated. At the same time, a stream of evil aura, along with the sword, infiltrated his sea of consciousness and fused with his host soul. A desire to destroy all creatures arose from deep inside his consciousness. It was uncontrollable and irremovable. If all the people here were not dead, Xiang would never be able to stop this desire. His red eyes were full of bloodthirsty craziness. Under the urge of the evil desire, Xiang couldn't help but hold his face up, roaring like a demon from hell who liked to show off its ruthlessness. Qingming's face suddenly changed. Fan Xiangyun was stunned. She then hastily cast all kinds of spiritual illusions to agitate Xiang's mind, pushing him into a fantasy. However, hallucinating secret technique of Yin-Yang Wonderland instantly lost their effects as soon as they met Xiang's eyes. His eyes smashed down any kind of fantasy. Fan Xiangyun was aghast. She was born with the soul martial spirit, which not only helped her easily grasp all sorts of charm martial techniques of Yin-Yang Wonderland but also enhanced her power several times. Over many years, the combination of the strange mind martial spirit and the enchanting secret technique of Yin-Yang Wonderland had affected numerous warriors, who then had to kneel down in front of her. Nevertheless, a Nirvana realm warrior like Xiang had unexpectedly broken her enchantment. When he held the mysterious giant sword in his hand, his soul seemed to be thoroughly immune and was no longer affected by the attacks of others. This major change frightened Fan Xiangyun very much. Her innate martial spirit had lost its efficacy. It was no different from a blow that seriously injured her, so it took all of her courage to rush forward and start a fight with Xiang. The King of Earth was aghast as he quickly stood up. When the hand holding the white fan flipped, a whirlwind instantly appeared, birds flew around, and a splendid golden sword emerged in his palm. The 100-meter-long golden sword's light burst out and turned into a long dragon king. Many birds flew out from there, penetrating the dragon king's body. The energy of those birds gathered all in one place. The dragon king twisted and turned, with scales on its body discharging many colorful lights. The Dragon King flew toward Shi Yang with an imposing, arrogant appearance. At the same time, Qingming screamed out, giving a command to the king corpse. The 3-meter-tall king corpse held its face up, releasing earth-shaking roars. Even the originally dead mountains trembled from its roars. Among the howls, the king corpse leaped up while his mouth spurted out groups of 5 elements twilight. 5 huge light columns condensed in the void, turning into the 5 elements twilight, which could bind all creatures. This 5 elements twilight started to wrap around Shi Yang's legs. As soon as the Dragon King and the 5 elements twilight appeared, the deserted island instantly had a big change. Dark clouds, which had existed there all the time, were pressed down, making it look like the sky was about to collapse. Shi Yang held the giant sword in his hand, raised his head up to glance at dark clouds above his head, and realized there were countless insects' corpses, which often appeared on dead bodies, which were wiggling and absorbing the corpse aura rising from underneath. Those insects' corpses were controlled by the king corpse, tearing and swallowing each other to become even bigger. Each new insect's corpse had a volume 10 times bigger than before, and their power also skyrocketed. Millions of insects' corpses wriggled, devoured each other, and then formed into tens of thousands of fat insects' corpses like snow-white maggots. There was still sticky snow-white liquid on their bodies, which looked extremely nauseating. Staying inside the gravitational field, Shi Yang stood still, sensing all kinds of energy which were bursting out and impetuously pouring into the giant sword. When 1/3 of the eyes on the sword had opened, it stopped absorbing the power from his body. Right at this time, Shi Yang swung the sword, slashing that 100-meter-long Dragon King's head. Crack, crack, crack. When the giant sword was swung up, the void began to break apart. It was like an extremely evil eye that brought along exotic, wicked forces that were infiltrating the sword. The mysterious secret giant sword suddenly emitted bloody red light, turning the sky above the deserted island into a sea of blood. 1/3 of the number of the opened eyes had also turned a pink hue. With the giant sword as the center, a flow of evil, destructive aura turned into a bunch of sticky bloodlight splashing and spreading out all directions. That flow of bloodlight was as if it had its own life, flying to the exact caves that have the disciples of the corpse's god sect and the yin-yang wonderland inside. When the bloodlight entered the body, the disciples of the 2 sects screamed out miserably as their bodies quickly dissolved and turned into a puddle of blood. Nirvana realm warriors could resist for a short while but had to bear the extreme pain. They helplessly looked at the bloodlight that was gradually eroding their bodies and then turned them into a puddle of blood in the end. Sky realm warriors had faster reactions than the others. As soon as they saw the bloodlight coming, they hurriedly turned around and ran away, escaping from the fatal blow. If a warrior got hit by the bloodlight, he would definitely become a puddle of blood sooner or later. Their aura didn't dissolve but was absorbed by Shi Yang's mystery martial spirit. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. Shi Yang suddenly held his face up to the sky and laughed out loud. His laughter was extremely wild and fierce. He felt the spiritual aura infiltrating his body. He slightly swung the mysterious giant sword as a flow of sharp bloodlight shot out and instantly slashed the Dragon King into half. Dozens of birds flew out from the Dragon King, but the evil forces of the bloodlight spread and quickly cut them into pieces. Thus, the strand of God consciousness from the King of Earth was erased. The birds finally disappeared like a puff of smoke. Shi Yang swung his sword once again. The brutal sword pierced through the sky as if it wanted to cut a deep bottomless abyss. The insects' corpse hiding in the dark clouds were swallowed by the abyss in the sky even before they could use their forces. They then permanently disappeared into that chaotic space. This is my power. I'm so comfortable and so happy. Crazily laughing out loud, Shi Yang was holding the mysterious sword in his hand, slightly swaying his head with satisfaction. He was getting crazier and crazier. The 3-god realm Qingming, the King of Earth, and the Queen of Sky were bewilderedly watching Shi Yang while they had a bone-chilling feeling in their hearts. Chapter 355, I Give You Freedom. Chapter 355, I Give You Freedom. Above the deserted island, Shi Yang was crazily laughing. The mysterious god sword in his hand swung up and the sharp bloodlight quickly hacked down on the opposite mountain. The bloodlight minced the mountain as if it smashed a piece of tofu, splitting it into two halves. The mountain collapsed shortly after. Holding the mysterious giant sword in his hand, Xiang felt a wonderful pleasure as if he was grasping the whole world. His forces spread out, and the scene appeared clearly in his soul consciousness. He couldn't suppress the desire of destroying all creatures, regretting not being able to kill everything with just one slash. It was an indescribable joy. From a distance, two Sky Realm warriors had been lucky enough not to be killed under Xiang's sword. They were wearing panicked looks on their faces and didn't have the courage to take actions anymore, not daring to come closer as they felt extremely insecure. In these Sky Realm warriors' eyes, Xiang now was like an undefeatable demon god. Only avoiding him could save their lives. Even the three God Realm warriors Qingming, the King of Earth, and the Queen of Sky felt frightened, silently watching Xiang laughing out loud, not knowing what they should do. Only the 10,000-year king corpse of the Corpses God sect was not scared of Xiang's impetuous momentum, quickly rushing toward him. In the dazzling five elements halo, condensed by the five elements forces of the world with blazing light and surging power, the king corpse instantly appeared in front of Xiang. Ha ha ha! Xiang grinned while raising the mysterious giant sword. The thick blood light spread out in all directions, which was not different from the fresh blood that flowed out from the sword. The eyes on the sword were glowing scarlet, shooting out ferocious looks while the pupils were rolling as if they were waiting for him to launch an attack. The sword aura tore the sky apart, creating a big hole. Numerous strange lights shot out from that hole like shooting stars, zoomed straight for the corpse insects, drew them in, and then they soon disappeared into the huge space hole, no longer existing in this world. Ow! Wailing. The king corpse raised its head up, roaring. Following the roar, the five elements force massively gathered, then fused with layers upon layers of dead aura, and poured into the five elements halo. After having received more power, the five elements halo, which looked like a huge multicolored cloud, became vigorous and suddenly stormed toward Xiang. The king corpse turned around, passed into the five elements halo, and then strangely disappeared. Xiang sneered, his face was as cold as ice. When the sword swung up, evil bloodlights burst out from the eyes on the sword and hacked straight to the five elements halo. Wherever the bloodlights passed through, the five-element halo was swiftly split into pieces, which was as simple as tearing a rag apart. The faces of the Queen of Sky and the King of Earth changed dramatically. A trace of panic flashed across their eyes. Qingming's eyes glinted with a green light, and green flames shot out from his pupils. Looking at the five elements halo, he raised his hands with gloves forming a cross sign and then launched a strange hand seal. Strands of consciousness suddenly flowed out from Qingming's mind like streams and instantly infiltrated the five elements halo. After having received Qingming's consciousness, the five elements halo, which had originally been split into pieces earlier, slowly condensed with the speed that was visible to the naked eye. On that five elements halo, the king corpse's ferocious body suddenly flashed up like an electric light. As soon as it appeared, the pair of eyes, which didn't have human emotions, glimmered with a flickering green flame. At this moment, through the corpse flame, the king corpse formed a delicate connection with Qingming as if Qingming's spirit had been consigned to it. The king corpse's pupils turned green, his eyes suddenly became strange. The hair on its 3-meter-tall body, which looked like an ape, began to quiver even without the wind. Each strand of hair contained tremendous aura. The king corpse's body suddenly trembled as its hair fell, as hard as steel needles, shooting straight at Xiang like a shower. The attacking range covered the entire space around him. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Innumerable hairs from the king corpse blanketed the sky and then crashed into Xiang's body before Xiang could react. Bang, bang, bang. Hair that hit on his upper body was like hitting steel, producing sonorous sounds. None of them could injure him. However, as his lower body hadn't been mutated yet, the king corpse's hair could quickly pierce through it. Xiang's 2 legs, which already looked ugly as they had been pecked by the flock of birds of the King of Earth earlier, now had been drilled by those strands of hair, and thus looked terrible. Although the bones had not been damaged yet, blood and flesh had already been blended up. Following the king corpse's hairs, millions of flows of corpse aura spread out and destroyed Xiang's legs. After the corpse aura had penetrated his body, It quickly ran along the tendons and rushed into his waist. Shi Yang slightly shuddered, hastily urging the swirl on his abdomen along with gathering the fire power of the earth flame at the same time. After that, he pushed that power toward his legs and struggled with the corpse aura, preventing it from invading his body. Oh oh oh! After the first blow had been launched successfully, the king corpse continued roaring and dashing forward. When he used his innate secret art of cadaver, countless corpse aura was condensed inside its claws, making them 10 meters longer. Its claws flashed up and snatched at Shi Yang. Surging corpse aura filled the entire sky and massively rolled toward Shi Yang. This blow of the king corpse was extremely sharp and contained the resentment of millions of creatures in the world. This evil blow also influenced Shi Yang's soul. Shi Yang tried to press down the pain on his legs. The star shield was launched, countless starlight flashed up and wrapped around his body, giving it full protection. He then glided over and attempted to release one slash. Cling, cling. The king corpse's devil sharp claw was cut off. Although its nails were also broken, they were still very stinging, looking like 10 sharp swords full of horrendous momentum dashing towards Shi Yang. Puff puff puff. The sharp, long nails pierced the star shield, shaking numerous star dots causing them to burst out altogether. The king corpse's nails exploded together with the star shield and gradually dissipated. However, there were still 10 half-a-meter-long fragmented nails left stabbing Shi Yang's chest with undiminished speed. Suti sui. 10 pointed sharp nails like 10 small swords struck his mutant body, piercing 3 centimeters into his body. It was only 3 centimeters. 10 sharp nails strangely shook all of a sudden. The strength of those nails constantly penetrated Shi Yang's chest but was intercepted by a mysterious barrier. The king corpse's claws could raise the mountain and destroy the earth. It could be described as one of the strongest attacks of the king corpse or could be compared to the full-power spirit-leveled sharp sword. It was even difficult for a God Realm warrior with a full defense to resist it. If the warriors were not cautious, this blow could pierce them to death. Qingming also believed that Shi Yang would certainly be dead under this blow. He had witnessed many powerful warriors being pierced through just by one claw of the king corpse. There was no exception. However, the result this time gave him an inexplicable horror. It was only 3 centimeters. No matter how hard those 10 nails had tried or had gathered plenty of corpse aura around, they couldn't move forward any further, not even 1 centimeter. Qingming was aghast. Shi Yang's face also changed. He suddenly felt a strange power in his countless muscle fibers releasing a violent counterattack that not only prevented the attack of those 10 nails but also defiantly resisted the opponents. Billions of muscle fibers interweaved into numerous hands and slowly pushed the king corpse's claws out of Shi Yang's body. Ow ow wailing. The king corpse roared and howled crazily. It barged forward one more time. The broken nails grew again and reached 10 meters in just a blink. It was bizarre. Shi Yang's eyes slightly changed, and he suddenly revealed a strange smile. One of his hands pushed forward, and the crazy power of his body instantly churned up, fusing with the ice-cold flame, the Holy Spirit God, the earth flame, and the profound chi of his body, which condensed into a huge hand print like an enormous mountain crashing toward the king corpse. When the king corpse rushed toward Shi Yang and was only about 5 meters away from him, the king corpse was suddenly grasped by a life seal as big as a mountain. The king corpse's 3-meter-tall body was tied up tightly, and a vibrant living aura infiltrated his body. The king corpse was originally ferocious but now became stagnant and motionless. Its pupils turned bleary and blankly stared at Shi Yang. At the same time, a subtle connection between Shi Yang and the king corpse appeared. Kill, kill, kill. An evil intent came up from the king corpse's mind and instantly went into Shi Yang's sea of consciousness. Shi Yang's eyes flashed up as he quickly moved that ferocious aura to his host soul. Without waiting for the king corpse's response, Shi Yang connected the king corpse with the host soul in the sea of consciousness to open the third eye at his glabella. A bunch of silver light shot out from the third eye, zoomed across the space, and directly fell into the king corpse's brain. That silver light instantly found the soul-controlling technique seed which Qingming had placed inside the king corpse's brain. The silver force, which belonged to the 9 Serenities' soul-devouring flame, shone exactly on the soul-controlling seed. It was not different from the method that Shi Yang had applied on Fan Xiongyun's consciousness, which was shining the dazzling light at it and burning it to ashes. The force that had imprisoned the king corpse disappeared into thin air. The murderous intent inside the king corpse head, which was formerly inflamed, now gradually calmed down. After having been under the soul-controlling technique's confinement over tens of thousands of years, the king corpse finally took back its initiatives and restored its spiritual knowledge. Who are you? A strand of consciousness followed the king corpse's soul coming into Shi Yang's sea of consciousness. Don't ask who I am. I am not your enemy. Shi Yang was overjoyed as he hurriedly forged iron when it was still hot. I have removed the soul-controlling technique which had existed tens of thousands of years inside your brain. I give you freedom. From now on, you can choose your own life. No one will enslave you anymore. Freedom, freedom. The king corpse's spirit churned up. Some kind of force burned up in its bleary eyes and wiped the green fire out of its body. P2E. Hierarchy of the corpse's god sect Qingming suddenly spurted out a mouthful of blood while his eyes showed his fear. He blankly looked at Shi Yang and then shifted his eyes to the king corpse that was gradually coming to his senses. He hysterically screamed out, "No, it's impossible. Absolutely impossible." Chapter 356, Looking Forward to Your Growth. Chapter 356, Looking Forward to Your Growth. Qingming had never been this panicked before. King Corpse was the fundamental foundation of the Corpse God sect, and thus, the King Corpse's mightiness was related to the Corpse's God sect. Thanks to its existence, Qingming could be one of the dominators in the Endless Sea. It could be said that without King Corpse, Qingming would not have had his status today. Regardless of whether it was now or in the future, King Corpse was the assurance of his strength. Without King Corpse, he would lose his current status and his position in the Corpse's God sect might be under siege as well. The cultivation of the Corpse's God sect's secret techniques had some relations with King Corpse as well. Once King Corpse was out of his control, it would be difficult for him to break through the next realms and he could never make any further step for the rest of his life. The King Corpse's abnormal change was tens of thousands of times harder to accept than Shi Yang killing him by a sword. Having seen King Corpse gradually restore his consciousness, Qingming was totally panicked. He was truly terrified. He had lost everything. You are free. In the middle of the void, Shi Yang held the mysterious giant sword and transmitted his consciousness continuously, waking up the King Corpse's spiritual mind that had been bound for tens of thousands of years. His efforts soon received an effect. King Corpse no longer took actions toward Shi Yang, and the murderous intent in the King Corpse's soul also disappeared. It was blankly standing in the void while its soul seemed to gradually regain vague memories as if it just remembered something extremely important. Qingming was roaring non-stop beneath, but he had no way to influence the King Corpse anymore. The King Corpse's originally empty eyes slowly regained human emotions, looking like it was sinking deep in thought and searching for something. Shi Yang didn't say a word nor took the opportunity to take action. He was vigilant while continuing to send his friendly intents to it. That year, he had used his consciousness to contact the 10,000-year Earth Flame. Right now, he was using the same way to build a good relationship with the King Corpse. It was unknown whether it was Shi Yang's persistence or his friendly consciousness that had an effect on the King Corpse, who had formerly been stunned and was suddenly ignited with killing intent. However, its target now was not Shi Yang, but Qingming. The 5 elements halo under Shi Yang's feet churned up, looking like a big light net dashing to cover Qingming. The Queen of Sky and the King of Earth were aghast and subconsciously ran far away, but were still afraid of becoming the King Corpse's target. As they were warriors of the Tutor Sea, they clearly knew how terrifying the King Corpse was. In recent years, Qingming had taken advantage of the King Corpse to kill many high-class warriors. Being able to use the 5 elements force as well as being invulnerable to sabers or spears, King Corpse could be immune to any kinds of attack. It could control the corpse aura and turn it into a steady stream of power. On this island, once King Corpse started the slaughter, even Fan Xiongyun was frightened. A trace of despair flashed in Qingming's eyes. The King Corpse relentlessly attacked him like a sword, smashing down his last hope, making him realize that from now on, King Corpse would no longer be under his control. He understood the king corpse's mightiness better than anyone else. As soon as the king corpse took action, Qingming desperately stared at Shiyang with pernicious eyes and roared angrily, "Shiyang, I will kill you sooner or later. I want you to taste the fiercest torture in the world." While releasing an ear-splitting scream, a green flame burned up in Qingming's eyes, forming a strange fire. Inside that flame, numerous creeping corpse shadows launched strong evil forces. Qingming's inky black tunic gathered the corpse aura around him, forming a bunch of sharpened streams of light that quickly zoomed toward the west and instantly disappeared into the horizon. When the king corpse descended from the sky, bringing along the five elements halo, Qingming had already vanished, leaving no trace. The Queen of Sky and the King of Earth exchanged looks and they both chose to retreat. Their bodies simultaneously emitted dazzling lights that distorted the space around and then disappeared into thin air. God Realm warriors had the ability to transport tens of thousands of miles in just a blink. By either using secret treasures or bursting their body strength, they could not only move thousands of miles but also hide their auras and souls. Except for someone who had the ability to detect the souls or cast their supernatural powers to catch up, it was challenging to find them again. To pull up the roots, one should have supernatural strength as well as a higher cultivation base than that of the opponents to identify their souls. Shiyang obviously didn't have that kind of ability. That was why he could only helplessly watch the Queen of Sky and the King of Earth disappear. Right after Qingming, Fan Xiong-yun, and the King of Earth left, Shiyang was about to take action against the other warriors around but then realized that they had left or hidden themselves a long time ago. Some of them used secret treasures, some used secret techniques, and others burst their body strength to flee away. Shiyang's face darkened. He only had Nirvana Realm Cultivation Base and thus couldn't detect the opponent's souls. If he had Sky Realm Cultivation Base and used the advantage of his host soul, it would allow him to find one or two Sky Realm warriors, and if he had God Realm Cultivation Base, he could surely pursue and find the souls of Qingming, Fan Xiong-yun, and the King of Earth. Unfortunately, his realm now was just the second sky of Nirvana Realm. After all the warriors had completely disappeared, there was only a flock of corpse slaves, 2 sky corpses, and himself. After destroying the gravitational field, Shiyang stood in silence, surrounded by dead mountains while continually absorbing the sky and earth aura around him. He had killed around 10 warriors at the Nirvana realm or lower using the mysterious giant sword. Their auras all rolled into his body. These auras were very precious to him as they could help him complete his mutation process. Thus, he would not let them slip away. When the king corpse had contact with him, it transmitted an amount of corpse aura which wrapped around Shiyang's legs. Now, it started retrieving that aura, revealing Shiyang's stickly bloody legs. However, under the immortal martial spirit's effect, his wounds began to recover. During the process of developing and reconnecting muscles and tendons, he had to endure a great pain. However, thanks to the immortal martial spirit's effect, the wounds healed very quickly. The immortal martial spirit was really worthy of the sacred martial spirit. The more severe the wound was, the faster the healing speed would be. If one got a minor wound in battle, it could be healed immediately. Standing in the void and sensing the healing process of the immortal martial spirit, Shiyang sneered, feeling relaxed. Right at this moment, the mysterious giant sword suddenly slipped away from his hand, turned into a flow of bloodlight, and then drilled into the blood vein ring, staying there silently motionless. When the giant sword was gone, Shiyang felt extremely fatigued. Even lifting his arms or legs was very hard and heavy to him. That was the after-effect of the second sky of rampage. As he could feel an impetuous aura pouring into his body as well as the great pain when his meridians were being torn apart, his face immediately became discolored. The number of warriors who had died in his hands was quite big. Moreover, their realms were quite profound. Thus, the auras exuded after they died were far beyond Shiyang's endurance. They penetrated into his meridians, bringing along numerous negative emotions of fear, despair, and resentment that gradually affected his mind. Using his experiences, as soon as Shiyang felt he was about to be unable to bear it anymore, he immediately left and found a way to give vent. From below, the king corpse was standing together with the 2 sky corpses, one male and one female, staring at Shiyang, seeming to say something. Xiang frowned. Even though he had the ability to connect with them, he still had a feeling of insecurity. He wasn't sure when he would lose his consciousness or burst out while those 3 sky corpses were not truly obedient yet. He also wasn't certain whether they would do anything to him when he lost his mind. These 3 sky corpses were intimidating as they already had their own intelligence. With the passage of time, the wisdom of the king corpse would increase. Xiang understood that once the king corpse recovered its spiritual wisdom, very few people in the endless sea could control it. Even Qingming, who had been studying corpse controlling technique for many years, had run away. So, who else dared to confront it? Perhaps only he could. However, his situation was very special as he could lose his mind or give vent at any time. He needed time to release the harshness inside his body. In the meantime, if the 3 corpses were on his side, he didn't know what would happen. He didn't dare to take risks. Therefore, after weighing his odds, he immediately made a decision. You are free. From now on, you can choose your own path of evolution. I liberate you and don't want to bind you as your former master did. Thus, you don't need to follow me. It is the best for your evolution. Take care. I hope you will become the world's top new species. I hope we will see each other again. If you can speak by that time, we can be partners and friends. After having sent out his consciousness to the 3 sky corpses, Xiang didn't wait for them to reply but instantly started the starlight, turning into a beam of light flying away. The 3 corpses looked at the sky, a trace of reluctance flashing up in their eyes. They seemed to want to catch up, but they didn't move. Chapter 357, Fame of Brutality. Chapter 357, Fame of Brutality. King Corpse and the 2 sky corpses raised their heads looking at the sky, standing motionlessly. After a while, the sky corpses' eyes glinted with a strange light as if they had been enlightened about something. The king corpse suddenly leaped up, quickly moving around the yin wooden coffins in the mountain caves, seeming to remove the corpse controlling technique to help the corpse slaves inside awaken. Not long after, the yin wooden coffins, one by one, followed the king corpse's instruction to fly west. The other 2 sky corpses seemed to have reached a delicate connection with the king corpse, keeping up with the others. When they arrived at the west side of the yin wind island, they saw the king corpse sitting on a yin wooden coffin, floating on the sea. The 2 sky corpses flew over to their yin wooden coffins. The lids of the 2 coffins suddenly opened and the 2 corpses got in and lied down. When they got in their yin wooden coffins, the king corpse's body also shrank and lied down in his coffin. More than 10 coffins were floating on the sea, quietly moving forward to the west at full speed. Their direction was headed toward the headquarters of the corpse's god sect. On their way, any warrior who saw this strange scene fled. A row of coffins not under control of the corpse's god sect was floating on the sea, which gave those warriors a chilling feeling as they didn't know what happened that these corpses could become this weird. The Jiyu family on the Thousand Swords Peak. At this moment, the Thousand Swords Peak had become the base where forces in the Hengluo Sea gathered to deal with demon dwellers. Jiyu Shao, Yu Qin, and the master of the Dongfang family, Fangju, also assembled here. Even Cao Jilan and Man Jiyu brought their fellows here. In recent days, with the Thousand Swords Peak as the center, all top-class warriors from big forces of different seas gathered and discussed the detailed plan to deal with demon dwellers altogether. The sea in front of the Thousand Swords Peak naturally became the vehement fighting area between demon dwellers and warriors. Both sides put their great forces into this area. Half a month had passed, and many high-class warriors and demon dwellers had died in battle. Presently, the group of Jiyu Shao, Yu Qin, and Dongfangju were happy due to some small victories of recent wars. In the past few days, the master of the Cao family, Cao Qiudao, with the palace head master Yang Yitian had responded. Their forces had started departing from the Tutor and Sky Seas, approaching Hengluo Sea. That news elated everyone. The group of Jiyu Shao and Yu Qin clearly knew the mightiness of Cao Qiudao and Yang Yitian, and that their appearance would give the situation an earth-shaking change. The demon dwellers' massacre of warriors in the Hengluo Sea seemed to have aroused the anger of the 2 of them to the point that they had decided to unite and deal with the demon dwellers, although they hadn't been in contact with each other for decades. It was unknown whether the demon dwellers had also received the news because their attacks had slowed down in recent days, as if they were waiting for something. The wind blew strongly, and rain fell heavily as a big storm was on the horizon. The Hengluo Sea was like a huge feast of strength, a place where high-class warriors from different seas gathered. Everyone's face was excited as if they saw the dawn of victory. They started to discuss what would be the next step in attacking the opponent. While everyone was delighted, Qingming, the Queen of Sky, and the King of Earth all wore dark eyes as if they had just had a dead child. Qingming, is that little rascal Shiyang dead? Ji Yushao was sitting neatly on a god sword, revealing a rare smile. You guys had previously sent a message saying that you could kill Shiyang. With the unity of the three of you, together with the Queen of Sky's illusory soul, it should have been very easy to obliterate him. Yu Qin and Dong Fangju also looked toward the other three, instantly feeling shocked and surprised when seeing their eyes. Cao Zhilan was sitting at the cow's seat, and Chu Yangqing was standing behind Yu Qin. They both immediately shifted their attentive eyes toward those three when they heard Ji Yushao's question. After arriving here, Qingming, the Queen of Sky and the King of Earth all kept silent with dark eyes as they found a place to sit down. Under the others' attentive looks, they simultaneously sighed. Everyone was stunned, their expression became eccentric. As they felt something strange, they paid even more attention to the other three. Qingming, you guys couldn't kill him? Ji Yushao was startled, not believing that was true, then asked with surprise, even though his strength can be equivalent to that of a god realm with the help of external forces in a short time, that little rascal surely cannot escape from the unity of the three of you. I know that Qingming's king corpse has also been on the Yinwing Island and we all know how intimidating it is. The king corpse alone is enough to kill that kid. Is there something else that happened unexpectedly? As soon as Ji Yushao mentioned the king corpse, Fan Xiongyun and the King of Earth instantly shuddered with their extremely odd faces as if a sword had stabbed them. Qingming's eyes were flooded with resentment like someone touching his wound. He suddenly stood up, looking toward Ji Yushao. Ji Yushao was astonished. He felt awkward as he didn't know what to say for now. How was it? The king corpse has gotten out of Qingming's control. The King of Earth shook his head, revealing a smile, and then reluctantly said, only ghosts know what happened in the end. That little rascal launched a strike on the king corpse, and it immediately turned and tried to kill Qingming, and forced us to run away. Run away? The surrounding warriors who were thrilled suddenly became dazed when they heard the absurd story. Cao Zhilan shuddered, secretly gritting her teeth. Her beautiful eyes were flooded with fear and incredibility. Chu Yangqing was also stunned as he looked bewilderedly at the weird faces of the three people of Qingming's group. She was frozen for a while and didn't know what had happened. After that, many warriors noisily screamed out myth as they felt that the three people of Qingming's group had lost their minds and talked nonsense. Ah, Queen of Sky, what happened to your body? Yu Qin of the Heaven Lake Divine Land discovered the abnormal things, surprisingly asked, what happened? Fan Xiongyun was still wearing a green skirt. Her big firm breasts, which made other women envious with admiration, had been deflated. It wasn't just a normal deflation. It became totally flat. What had happened? How come the Queen of Sky's enormous bosom that made men crazy and women jealous has completely disappeared? In the palace, after having heard Yu Qin say this, a majority of warriors all looked toward Fan Xiongyun with eccentric faces as if they had discovered a new continent, secretly exclaiming and continuously guessing. Fan Xiongyun's enchanting face suddenly became livid as if she had just been poisoned, becoming contorted, terribly changing without any trace of the charm that she used to have. The instant change made other people freeze. Any warrior who looked at her breasts felt stinging in their eyes. Some warriors with low cultivation base had to hold their heads to keep them from rolling on the ground. Queen of Sky, what are you doing? Dong Fangju's face changed color. His question was like thousands of beasts roaring, breaking the illusion in the palace. As he saw the group of warriors behind spurting out mouthfuls of blood, the Dongfang family's people all stood up, shouting out loud. Fan Xiongyun's face was distorted. She clenched her teeth, bowed her head gasping for breath, seeming to try to restrain her extreme rage. Let it go, let it go. Don't fight with each other. As Yuqin felt that the situation was intense, she rushed out and made peace. She then looked toward the three people of the King of Earth's group and calmly asked, "What happened after all?" The King of Earth constantly shook his head with an odd face. He looked at Fan Xiong-yun, who was about to carry on a massacre, and then threw a glance at Qingming, who wanted to use his heaven flame. He sighed, shook his head and said, "That was the consequence from the deed of that rascal Xiang." Xiang. Everyone lowered their voices, murmuring his name while their faces were overwhelmed with fear and surging waves burst out inside their heart. How could it be? Just using the external forces to have the strength which could reluctantly be comparable to that of God Realm warriors, what did he rely on to make those famous master warriors not only not succeed in killing him, but also fall into such a desolate end? Was it the truth? Warriors inside the palace suddenly quieted down as if there was an invisible soundproof wall enclosing everyone. Even the sound of a falling needle could not be heard. This thing, can you tell us more details? Ji Yushao hesitated a little bit, carefully choosing every word to avoid irritating Qingming and Fan Xiong-yun. We don't know what tricks that little rascal used. If it keeps going like this, I am afraid that we will not be able to kill him next time either. The King of Earth looked at Qingming and the Queen of Earth. Seeing their uncomfortable faces, he revealed a wry smile and said, "That kid's tricks were very strange. His sword is even more devilish. There's nothing he could not break, as it smashed down all obstacles we came at it with. The most frightening thing is that we don't know what method he used to help the King Corpse escape our mind control. It was partially because the rebellion of the Sky Corpses that the mind martial spirit of the Queen of Sky lost its effect, and we eventually had to flee. Sigh, it was such a terrible thing to remember. If you guys encounter that little rascal, you must be very careful. You cannot just use your common sense to deal with him." Those warriors' faces immediately changed when they listened to his last sentence. "If we do not eradicate this rascal, we will not live in peace even if you can expel the demon dwellers." After contemplating, Fan Xiong-yun gritted her teeth and resentfully said. Qingming agreed with a nod, coldly saying, "We can delay the fight with the demon dwellers for now. We need to obliterate this rascal. We can't let him continue living. If he leaves the endless sea and escapes our pursuit, he will return and massacre all of us. No one can stop him, even Cao Qiudao and Yang Yitian. Right now, he is even more terrible than the Yang Tian Emperor." "I agree," Fan Xiong-yun said with resentment. "I agree too," said the King of Earth. Everyone was all stunned like wood. A long time after that, Ji Yushao looked at Yuqin and Dong Fangju and realized a trace of fear deep inside their eyes. They were obviously beginning to be scared. Chapter 358, Blessing and Peril Linked Together. Chapter 358, Blessing and Peril Linked Together. On the Wind Cloud Archipelago. It was an island situated in the chaotic area between the Hengluo Sea and the Blackwater Sea, which now became the gathering place for ordinary people of the Hengluo Sea. Under the arrangement of the Three Gods sect, Jiyu family, and Dongfang family, they had been migrated here. The sky and earth auras on this island were a little diluted, unsuitable for warriors to cultivate. Meanwhile, the Hengluo Sea was recently engaged in battles frequently. As the demon dwellers kept hunting and killing ordinary mortals, those three big forces united and gathered their people to move here. This place was packed and boisterous, and obviously not lacking pleasuring places. Although there were around 1 million people seeking refuge on this small island, they all lived in simple wooden houses or tents inside the barren mountains. In order to survive, ordinary people naturally would not care about this. What they wished was that they could quickly leave the demon dwellers' territory. There was a small market on the island where various types of daily necessities like grains, rice, wheat, and fresh water could be found. In the market, there was a brothel named Spring Breeze Pavilion. The business there was not going so well recently as the ordinary people's interest in pleasure had decreased. The money that they earned was used to purchase food and other necessities for their daily life. However, in the past 2 days, Spring Breeze Pavilion had welcomed a special guest who spent very generously, paying for all the ladies there. It had already been 1 day of enjoying lustful pleasure, but he still wasn't exhausted. The face of Spring Breeze Pavilion's hostess was full of joy. She held a heavy bag of crystal coins and felt happy, thinking to herself that she had to meet all the requirements of that guest. Many women with typical appearances kept going in and out from a standard room. The women leaving the room all displayed excitement and satisfaction on their faces. However, every one of them had to hobble out of the room, although they all had walked in the room normally. The hostess Yunjie stood right in front of the room with the bag of coins in her hand and peeked inside the room from time to time. Not long after that, a lady who was about 20 years old stepped out with her naked breasts. She staggered out of the room with a blushing face. Just after a few steps, she released a scream and hurriedly stretched her hand holding onto a nearby column. Xiao Daohua, how was it? Is he continuing? Yunjie rushed forward to support the girl whose limbs were all numb as she asked with surprise. The girl shyly nodded with a blushing face and watery eyes. She prettily said, "That young master is not human. His payment is very generous. He has spent so much already." Yunjie slightly chuckled and supported the girl to another room to rest. At the same time, she threw a quick glance into the room, seeing 5 women sleeping deeply, and mumbled with a low voice, "Not enough girls. I have to tell Hongying to send some more girls over. If things continue like this, in another day and night, all of these girls will be exhausted." "Yunjie, what is the master's identity?" Xiao Daohua asked with her red face leaning against the window as she lightly yawned. "It has been 2 days, but he hasn't taken any rest. Our sisters have taken turns to serve him but couldn't knock him out. If it continues like this, I won't be able to stand anymore. Yunjie, please call someone else. I have to rest tomorrow. He has exhausted my body, and thus I have no strength to do it again." While muttering, she secretly gritted her teeth and then suddenly giggled. No one knew what wonderful part she was thinking of. Yunjie cursed under her breath, but her face was full of kindness and gentleness. "If Hongying brings more people here on time tomorrow, I will not bother you. However, if her people are late, you will have to do it again. We absolutely cannot stop. Otherwise, he might destroy our spring breeze pavilion." Xiao Daohua was astonished while her eyes were as bright as stars. She then said with a hazy face, "He is a guy that can make people love and hate him at the same time. If he lays his eyes on me, I will leave everything to follow him." "Well," Yunjie sneered and said, "I am sure that with his strength, you will not survive more than 1 month, as he will kill you on the bed. You better not have that thought." After having listened to these words, the girl was shocked, contemplated a moment before shaking her head, and then forced a miserable smile. Yunjie went out, helped another girl who was shaking and took her into the room to rest. At night, she arranged 7 charming ladies, who had been brought here from other brothels, to serve that guest one by one. Either day or night, there were always heart-stirring sounds coming from that room, as if there was a tireless monster continually battling inside. Another day had passed, and that room had begun to quiet down. "No one is allowed to disturb me. Otherwise, bear your own consequence." A voice came out from the room. The last girl staggered out of the room. She just screamed out and suddenly fainted, completely exhausted. 3 days had passed in just a blink. During these 3 days, that guest didn't have any requirements. He didn't call any girls in to serve him, nor did he have meals or drinks sent in. He just stayed in the room. Yunjie was secretly scared but didn't dare to visit and check on him. After 3 days of rest, the girls gradually restored their strength. They surprisingly realized that their skin became smoother and the wrinkles on some 30-year-old girls had disappeared. Their faces were snow-white and glowingly healthy. A few frail girls also recognized that their bodies were much better, no longer weak as before. All the girls gathered, twittering on about their discoveries. They all felt several years younger, as there were no more wrinkles on their faces, their skin renewed its vitality, and even their strength was much better. These discoveries surprised them greatly. They were now grateful to the guest who had tortured them badly the past few days. They gathered in front of that guest's room to see if he needed anything else. After having learned that those girls had some physical changes, Yunjie was secretly astonished. Waves of love surged up again after many years of restfulness. She waited for another day but didn't hear any commotion from the room. She couldn't wait any longer nor cared about that guest's rules. She pushed open the door of the room and entered. The room was empty, with only a heavy bag of crystal coins set on the table. After having heard the news, the other girls all rushed to the room and then discussed boisterously together. As that mysterious guest had secretly left, they were embarrassed and resentful at the same time, blaming him for being ruthless. A small light boat. A sturdy young man with a solemn face was sitting on a 3-meter-long wooden boat. He was looking straight ahead with his cold eyes. There was neither sail nor oar in the boat, but it was moving very fast on the sea like a fish swimming. This man was Shiyang. During the battle on Yinwind Island, he had borrowed the strength of the 3 great living forms and used the mysterious sword to kill more than 10 warriors with a high cultivation base, while having been surrounded by the 3 God Realm warriors Qingming, the Queen of Sky, and the King of Earth. He had harvested vigorous aura from the dead warriors. That significant amount of aura was unimaginable. During the mystery martial spirit's purification process, he had once again fallen into a backfire that was much crazier and fiercer than before. Reluctantly, he had gone to Spring Breeze Pavilion to give vent to his sexual desire in 3 days and nights, releasing all of the crazy lust in his body. He had also balanced his mind and had completed the mutation process. At this time, 369 acupuncture points and more than 6 billions of his muscle fibers in his body had completed their mutation. After the mutation had finished, he could feel the perfection and balance of his body. Previously, when the mutation wasn't complete, he had often felt dizzy, like having a constant hangover. His 2 legs couldn't bear the terrible weight of his upper body, and thus his bones had usually made cracking sounds as if they had been about to break at any time. After the mutation was complete, he realized that the weight of his body could be compared to a mountain that was hundreds of meters high and weighed tens of thousands of tons. However, he didn't have any abnormal feelings. He just felt that the inside of each muscle fiber and acupuncture point contained some sort of violent, bursting power. Although he didn't use profound chi or martial spirit, he still believed that he could defeat a second Sky of Nirvana realm warrior in a battle. The power inside his body surprised him a lot. The mutation of the petrifaction martial spirit had reached its extreme. Once he used his strength, his body would instantly show a purple hue, while the surging power from 369 acupuncture points and 6 billion muscle fibers irresistibly spewed out. The power really belonged to him. It was not from the external force anymore. The external force from the fusion of the ice-cold flame, the Holy Spirit God, and the earth flame would be consumed after each battle. After the completion of the mutation, they split off, which made him a little bit depressed. At this time, the ice-cold flame, the Holy Spirit God, and the earth flame had come back to the blood vein ring. As they had been exhausted, they had entered their long-term dormant state. He had no way to communicate with them. That made him feel a little guilty, but he didn't know what else to do. He thought to himself that when he reached a certain extent of the realm, he would make it up to them. The boat was moving effortlessly on the sea. Shiyang was going to an island in the Blackwater Sea today. He had asked around and knew that some people of the Xia family were residing there. After contemplating for a while, he leaped up from the boat and then descended on the island. He stayed hidden in the mountains and searched for those he wanted to find. Chapter 359. Tell her that I am still alive. Chapter 359. Tell her that I am still alive. Deep in the mountains, Shiyang wandered erratically like a ghost toward the forest. He flew incredibly fast through the woods, not following a straight line but an arc instead. Recently, he had tried both the electric shift and starlight, and luckily he had discovered that these 2 techniques could be combined, which helped enhance his flying speed one step further and made his flying trajectory more unpredictable. The electric shift moved in a straight line, taking the instantaneous burst of profound chi as a motive. Starlight was synchronized with the stars' moving tracks in the sky. The directions and timing both had marvelous changes. In a fight, Starlight had a miraculous effect which made people unable to distinguish between an attack and his whereabouts. However, it was such a waste if it was just being used as an ordinary means of transportation. After having combined electric shift and starlight, he used profound chi as a motive as well as relying on the flying rule of starlight to follow an arc-shaped track. By doing that, Not only did he consume less of his strength, but the flying speed was also faster. Moreover, he could change the trajectory instantly and shift to starlight at once. Therefore, if he encountered enemies on the way, he could confidently move forward, relying on the unpredictable starlight to sabotage all of the enemy's attacks. The news of many forces in the Hengluo Sea uniting to exterminate him had been spread throughout the endless sea. All warriors had heard about this. During this time, Xiang had searched for the whereabouts of the Xia family's people and received the news along the way. After the three strange living forms had separated, he had no power to confront God Realm warriors. In this situation, he had to make wise choices. Moreover, the mutation of his body had completed, so he didn't need to continue taking risks anymore, and thus, he chose to leave the Hengluo Sea to find Xia Xinyan. On the way, he was always vigilant. Once he detected warriors with a higher realm, he would proactively avoid them, preventing his whereabouts from being revealed. In the forest, he effortlessly flew like a misty smoke, appearing and disappearing like a ghost. Gradually, he entered deep inside the forest. Lush, verdant, immeasurably high ancient trees were everywhere. Although the sky and earth auras inside the forest were not rich, plants and trees still grew very well. Some beasts also appeared from time to time. However, most of them were low-grade beasts, and thus, he didn't really care about them. Not long after that, a figure slowly appeared, vigilantly looking around. That person's eyes suddenly brightened up when looking toward where he was hiding. "Friend, where do you come from?" Ju Yu took a deep breath and was secretly alert while he concentrated profound qi in his two hands. Rustling, rustling. Xiang pushed the dense leaves and stepped outside. He looked at the Sky Realm consecrator of the Xia family and asked, "Are you a Xia family member?" "Why you need to ask when you already know?" Ju Yu snorted while his hands emitted a flow of dazzling purple light suspending like misty, miasmatic smoke in a swamp, dashing toward Xiang. In that smoky light, numerous broken green points collided with each other, bursting out a tremendous power, enlarging the covering range of the smoke further. A powerful binding force came out from the purple smoke and enclosed Xiang in a scope of 50 meters. Xiang looked worried. His eyes flashed up with a strange light, and his skin instantly turned purple. Zhou Yu's eyes lit up while he felt astonished. He couldn't help but be about to take actions again. This person clearly only had the Nirvana realm but still was able to break down his binding net that he had cast out. Moreover, not many Nirvana realm warriors had that kind of strength. The fact that a Nirvana realm warrior could give such pressure to a Sky realm warrior like Ju Yu made him immediately change his contemptuous look toward Xiang. He was about to put forth all of his powers to kill that unidentified little rascal. "I am Xiang." Just as Ju Yu was ready to release a brutal blow, the young man on the tree suddenly spoke up with a low voice and solemn face. Joy Yu, who was gathering his strength, instantly ceased the attack as he his words. His eyes brightened up, and his face changed to be cheerful. "You are young Master Yang?" Xiang slightly nodded, carefully observing the expression changes on Zhou Yu's face. He waited until he was certain that Ju Yu was honest and sincere. When he felt assured, he then jumped down from the tree, stood in front of Ju Yu and said, "I want to know where your lady is." "I don't know." Ju Yu shook his head, forced a faint smile, and said, "Several days ago, while we were on the way to the Snow Dragon Island, we received news from Our Lady saying that we had to stop going to the Snow Dragon Island and return to the Hengluo Sea. After having received that news, we immediately went back, and since then, we haven't had any other news from her. We don't know where she is now." Xiang's face suddenly darkened. "Young Master Yang, there is a rumor about you. I don't know if it is true or not." A trace of grief glimmered in Zhou Yu's eyes. The rumor that Kai Yang had killed Xia Shengchuan had spread out through the Hengluo Sea. However, Ju Yu didn't want to believe it was true. He just assumed that it was just some trick of the Jiyu family and the Dongfang family used to split up the Xia family. Seeing Xiang right now, Ju Yu could no longer bear the doubt and thus finally asked. "The rumor is true." Xiang nodded with cold eyes. "That Kai Yang destroyed his soul right in front of me." Zhou Yu's eyes immediately turned red. He gritted his teeth, stiffened his face, not saying a word. "And you guys, how are you now?" Xiang kept silent for a while and asked again. The Xia family has been divided into two sides. One side is led by Xia Ruishing. After having heard about Master's death, they have chosen to submit to the Holy Spirit sect and the Spirit Treasure Wonderland of the Blackwater Sea. Our side continues to stay in some peaceful sea areas and wait for Our Lady. However, she is still not here yet, so we are very worried, not knowing if something has happened to her, Ju Yu said. Nothing will happen to your lady. Perhaps she will come back to find you soon. Xiang spoke to Ju Yu after having contemplated a little bit. Don't tell anyone that I have come here. Currently, all forces in the Endless Sea want to kill me. You guys need to be careful. If your lady sends out some news here, please let her know that I am still alive. Young Master Yang, Ju Yu was astonished, wanted to say something but then stopped. All right. That's it. Take care. The Xia family will not have to hide for so long anymore. I believe the Xia family will rise again soon. Xiang didn't mention Xia Jinghu as he was afraid that he might have given Ju Yu too much hope. If Xia Jinghu didn't get any better after using the Vain Spirit Pellet, Ju Yu would feel extremely disappointed. After having finished his words, Xiang waved his hand and left determined without lingering or waiting for Ju Yu to ask anything further. Ju Yu dazedly watched Xiang's figure gradually disappearing with a complicated face. This was the first time he met Xiang, and he felt that Xiang was indeed worthy of being Yang Tian Emperor's descendant. He had something to be proud of. Ju Yu, who has just come? A figure appeared. Xia Shenmao flew over from the rear of the mountain and then asked with a cautious face. Was it the people of Xia Ruishing coming here to persuade us again? I don't care if they leave, but convincing us to yield to the Holy Spirit sect and the Spirit Treasure Wonderland is too much. They don't feel ashamed. That year, when the Xia family was still strong, the Holy Spirit sect and Spirit Treasure Wonderland were always under our oppression. But right now, Xia Ruishing and his men even surrender to those two forces. They are shameless. If eldest brother knew this, he would certainly be mad. Master is dead. Zhou Yu's eyes were reddened. He muttered, he has just confirmed it. It is true that Kai Yang has killed Master. His soul has been scattered and perished. Xia Shenmao's body shook violently as if he was hit by a fatal blow. He staggered backward a few steps and then glacially said, Impossible, impossible. This is not true, not true. The person who has just come here is Xiang. Ju Yu released a sigh, he is worthy of being the strongest one of the Yang family. He has reached the Nirvana realm, and his power now is terrifying. He will not just stop at his current realm. It seems the rumor is true. Another consecrator of the Xia family came out, holding a letter in his hand and said in fear, Our informant has just sent more news, saying that Xiang has killed hundreds of warriors even though he has been alone in the Hengluo Sea. Those warriors were from different forces in the Endless Sea, including demon dwellers. The most unbelievable thing in the letter is that he has cut off one arm of Demon Master Ma Qidun and has also injured the hierarch of the Corpses God sect and the Queen of Skyfan Xiongyun of Yin Yang Wonderland. What? The bodies of Xia Shenmao and Ju Yu were shivering violently. They simultaneously screamed out loud while their eyes glinted with a trace of both joy and fear. On a light boat. Xiang was sitting straight on a boat with an emotionless face, avoiding crowded seas, moving toward the east. Glittering starlight shone down. He quietly perceived the marvelousness of the star martial spirit, using it to absorb the star power of the sky and earth, indulging himself in the star martial spirit, feeling the star's trajectory, and experiencing the moving principle of the stars in the world. Flows of spiritual power that were invisible to ordinary people gradually penetrated his body, becoming nutrients for the star martial spirit. The painful lesson on the Sun Island had taught him that only superior strength that went beyond all others would allow him to dominate this world and do whatever he wanted. Only breaking through new realms would make things happen as he pleased. He didn't want to see his beloved ones become dead bodies. The death of Jiao Hanyi, Linda, and Xia Shenchuan had ignited an ambitious flame of becoming powerful inside his heart. After leaving the Sun Island, everything he had done was to enhance his body strength. Killing demon dwellers and warriors of the Endless Sea or ravaging others was the goal of becoming stronger as fast as possible. Every day, every night, every hour, every moment, he was always sinking deep in thought. He thought about the marvelousness of different martial techniques, experienced the essence of various strengths, and tried to perceive and comprehend all of them. He never relaxed. Instead, it looked like he was possessed by the devil. Chapter 360, The Northern Dipper Net. Chapter 360, The Northern Dipper Net. The sun went down and then came up again. Xiang was sitting on the wooden boat. He closed his eyes meditating during the day and watched the starry sky at night with fascination. In the desolate god palace of the Three Gods sect, he had soaked himself in the star pond, opening the star martial spirit, through which he learned how to use the power of starlight, star shield, and star manipulation. Starlight was a martial technique that followed the magical trajectory of the stars in the sky. Star shield used the star power to release star wings to escape. Star manipulation could be obtained after having comprehended the stars, using the star power as an attacking method. He assumed that he had thoroughly comprehended the meaning of starlight and star shield, as he could combine these two types to exert power in a battle and increase his combat effectiveness. As for the star manipulation, the most profound one to master thoroughly, one was required to understand the operation rules of the stars in the sky and also know their true meaning in the heaven and earth. Therefore, Xiang put more effort to study star manipulation as he felt that it was very mysteriously unpredictable and seemed to contain endless possibilities. It was as if the true mystery of the star martial spirit stayed hidden on the star manipulation. Thus, it was only until he had a profound understanding of the star manipulation that he would then truly comprehend the star martial spirit and be able to perform it everywhere to reach a new realm. Late at night, stars were like gems shining and twinkling in the dark velvet sky. In the primitive age, when the Grace mainland had just been established, the stars in the sky had existed as early as anyone could remember, maybe since the beginning of time. The history of those stars was far older than that of the Grace mainland. Endless mysteries and many truths about heaven and earth stayed hidden in the vast sea of stars. The more he watched the stars, the smaller he felt in this world. He had a premonition that once he understood the mystery of the stars in the sky, he could escape the confinement of the Grace mainland and enter the galaxy to explore the infinite mysteries there. His restful mind submerged in the ethereal realm. He looked at the stars, which looked like gems filling the entire sky, while feeling a marvelous connection with them through the star martial spirit. The connection was very delicate. He tried to release a small trickle of his soul consciousness toward the sky, slowly penetrating the immense sea of stars. However, every time his soul consciousness drifted above the clouds in the sky and was about to escape the constraint of the Grace mainland, his mind became sluggish and distracted. The strand of soul consciousness, which had been released, would instantly return to his body. There always existed a wall in the dark. This wall seemed to exist at the horizon of the Grace mainland and shackled his martial spirit. Every time he wanted to pass through this wall, he was affected by its power, which led to his martial spirit's failure and destroyed all his efforts. He didn't give up but kept trying again and again. He launched his soul consciousness to the sky every night, trying to get rid of the wall's barricade. However, all of his attempts failed. As soon as he is close to touching the wall, he instantly failed. After countless unsuccessful attempts and innumerable failures, he finally came to a conclusion, which was that it must be due to his unqualified realm. Without reaching a certain realm, his soul consciousness would be affected by the wall's power. Once his soul consciousness came close to the wall, a force would immediately push it back to his body, and thus he would no longer be able to feel the existence of the wall. He gradually affirmed that only when he had increased his consciousness and upgraded his realm, he could touch that wall, drilling through it to enter the vast sky and understand the true meaning of the star's operation. Although he had encountered many failures, it didn't mean he gained nothing. Numerous trials of releasing the soul consciousness to the sky were also a process of condensing the soul consciousness, making it grow stronger. Thus, the covering range of his soul consciousness expanded a little, and the method of using the soul consciousness became more profound than before. Previously, when he had released his soul consciousness, he could only sense some volatilities of life within a radius of a few hundred miles. After many attempts, his soul consciousness could now cover a range of thousands of miles. Except for warriors with a profound cultivation base who could retrieve their soul fluctuations, nothing could escape his induction, whether it were human fluctuations or beasts' activities. Although Xiang temporarily left the soul consciousness penetration in the vast sea of stars aside, he still kept concentrating, watching, and studying the stars. During the day, he rested his mind and meditated, experiencing any changes of the star martial art. At night, he continued gazing at the stars. While watching the stars, he engulfed his spirit into them, checking the changes of the star martial spirit in correspondence with the stars in the sky, feeling their connections, studying the related mysteries, and trying to discover a higher level of star manipulation. There were countless star domains in the sky. Plenty of stars created the star manipulation. With mindful observation, a star domain looked like a natural, mysterious star formation, which had its typical trajectory and its own marvelousness. When he could understand that the stars in the sky were divided into different star domains, and each of which had its own unique magic, he would not waste more time paying attention to the entire star sky. Instead, he would focus only on just one star domain. He then put all of his mind and effort to study the closest star domain, where he could easily perceive the Big Dipper. He concentrated his eyes and mind only on the Big Dipper's star domain, watching 7 twinkling stars. It was unknown how many nights had passed. One day, when the night fell, the Big Dipper appeared in the star domain that he had been gazing at. The Big Dipper, formerly as small as a piece of grain, now seemed to gradually enlarge. The distance between him and the Big Dipper seemed to be shorter. The Big Dipper's twinkling dot started to appear in his eyes. The star martial spirit in his heart also had 7 stars, which somehow corresponded with the Big Dipper and made a connection with the stars in his eyes. The Big Dipper used to be as small as a piece of grain, but now it was getting bigger in his eyes. It was unknown how much time had passed. Under his attentive look, the Big Dipper's light in his eyes had suppressed all the other stars in the sky. The Big Dipper had been very small, just like a grain of rice, but it now suddenly became as big and dazzling as 7 mountains. In his eyes, the Big Dipper in the sky had become 7 enormous star mountains, and the distance between him and them was now extremely close. Abruptly, the star martial spirit in his body flashed up at the same time as the 7 stars in his eyes. In the dark, the Big Dipper also seemed to transmit 7 streams of light, creating a connection with him. Something in his head convulsed. When he was in a daze, a light suddenly flashed up. At this moment, his soul consciousness suddenly flew out and attached to the 7 stars. He felt like his soul consciousness was wandering around the Big Dipper, leaving the Grace mainland and entering the vast star domain of the Big Dipper. He silently perceived all of these during an unknown amount of time, through an unknown number of spaces, passionate and tipsy as if he was possessed by the devil. Fading at night and reappearing in daylight, however, in his mind, the Big Dipper was always bright and immortal regardless of day or night. It seemed to be a long-term phenomenon that had existed for countless years. His host's soul flew out from his head, quietly suspended in the sea of consciousness. He raised his head looking at the sky, feeling like the Big Dipper was at his fingertips. With such a state of mind, his body didn't move, his eyes didn't even blink, as he stared at the sky. He was in a stupor for more than half a month. Within half a month, it seemed like he had entered a secret scene where he then realized the truth of heaven and earth. Profound chi in his body continued flowing down to the wooden boat, which was quietly sailing on the desolate sea, moving toward the east. Time flew by. Late at night, Xiang was still looking at the sky. The brighter the 7 stars in his eyes were, the more frantically his heart was pounding. 7 streams of starlight, which naked eyes could see, looked like 7 springs pouring down from the sky, crossing the space barriers, and appearing above Xiang's head. 7 transparent streams of starlight like springs flooded down. Although Xiang couldn't directly absorb them, he could still feel the mysterious intimidation. 7 springs condensed into 7 meteorites, forming and maintaining the Big Dipper's formation while moving continually. His eyes and the star martial spirit suddenly were ablaze. Xiang sat straight on the wooden boat as if he could control the 7 meteorites. Wherever his eyes moved, the meteorites flew accordingly. Standing in front of his eyes was a reef that looked like an imposing mountain emerging from the sea. When his eyes moved over them, the 7 meteorites were still revolving, emitting starlight to all directions, and then suddenly rushed toward him. Boom boom! An earth-shaking impact occurred when all 7 of the meteorites collided on the jutted reef. Countless beams of starlight sparked on the reef, turning a mountain-like rock into ashes, and thus the reef no longer existed in this world. In the huge explosion, Xian's eyes restored their consciousness. The 7 stars gradually disappeared, but his eyes were full of stars glowing in the dark. Since the borrowed power of the Big Dipper displayed the profound meaning of the star manipulation, I will call it Northern Dippernet, Xiang murmured with a low voice and bowed his head, revealing a smile. Chapter 361, Top-Class Warriors. Chapter 361, Top-Class Warriors. Late at night, the moon appeared like a silver tray hanging over the Thousand-Sword Peak. Ji Yushao, Yu Qin, Dong Fangju, Qingming, the Queen of Sky, and the King of Earth, were closing their eyes, sitting with solemn faces on the Thousand-Sword Peel. They appeared to be waiting for someone. Not long after, dazzling fires came from the west as the sun god Tang Yuannan rode alone on the flame unicorn, stopping among the 6 god realm warriors. He looked at them coldly and then spoke up, "I don't know why have you called me here." When Tang Yuannan was talking, the sun power of his body condensed a scorching aura slowly spreading out from his body, covering everyone. The 6 people of Ji Yushao's group suddenly opened their eyes and looked toward Tang Yuannan simultaneously. "Bring Xiang out." Ji Yushao took a deep breath. His pupils looked like 2 sharp swords, dashing toward Tang Yuannan. Tang Yuannan's face slightly changed. He looked at Ji Yushao, shifting his eyes to the others, and said coldly, "Is this the decision of all 6 of you?" The group of them nodded altogether with unfriendly manners. "I don't have him," Tang Yuannan snorted, revealing a cold smile. He shook his head, "If you couldn't find him, why would you rely on asking me? Is the 3 gods sect that easy to bully?" "Hierarchy Tang!" Qingming shouted solemnly. Clusters of green fires flickered in his eyes, which were glinting with a vicious trace. "After the battle between that little rascal and Ma Qidun, you were the one who took him away. Although he has come out later, you certainly have a connection with him somehow." The Queen of Sky Fan Xiangyun also sneered, "During this time, we have been searching the entire Hengluo Sea. We have even checked around in the Kiara Sea, but we couldn't find that little rascal's whereabouts. The Endless Sea is very big, and many of us have exerted our God Realm cultivation base to search for him. However, we couldn't find anything, not even a trace. If you didn't hide him, who else did? Was it the remnant of the Yang family? As I have said, he is not in my hand." Tang Yuannan beamed a cold smile and continued, "The 3 of you have united to deal with him but still let him escape. And now, you assumed that you could use your soul consciousness to find him? Although I don't know how mysterious he is, I think if he could escape your siege, he would absolutely be able to avoid the search of your soul consciousness. You come to me after you couldn't track him down yourselves. How rational is that?" "Hierarchy Tang." Yu Qin revealed a faint smile and said, "We have not only united, but we have also borrowed secret techniques, using the God Realm's soul consciousness together with secret treasures of the Spirit Treasure Wonderland to carry the search to the entire Hengluo Sea and the Kiara Sea. However, we still couldn't find his trace. Not to mention that little rascal has only the Nirvana realm, so even if he had the God Realm cultivation base, he shouldn't be able to escape from us when we join forces. Only the God Palace on the seabed of the 3 gods sect with strange formations can prevent our soul consciousness. If he is not at your place, where else can he be? Don't waste time talking with him." Qingming was livid with rage, standing up while the superb adjoined corpse's flame was burning up in his eyes. "If we unite together, destroying the 3 gods sect is not a difficult matter. After demon dwellers had invaded the Endless Sea, the 3 gods sect hasn't joined forces with us nor participated in our actions. Apparently, they have wicked intentions. That little rascal progresses every day, and thus his intimidation is growing larger every day. When he really grows up, none of us can survive." "That's right," Fan Xiangyun also stood up and said. "Instead of being wary of him day and night, we'd better solve it completely once and for all." The faces of Ji Yushao's and Yu Qin's group looked unfriendly, They seemed to have the intention of joining forces to kill Tang Yuan. But at this moment, the moon in the sky suddenly brightened up. A pretty figure quietly appeared under the moonlight. A beautiful silhouette flew out from that full moon-shaped circle of light. That circle of light absorbed the moonlight in the air and then fell to a 5,000-meter-high mountain beside the Thousand-Sword Peak. Boom, boom, boom. That circle of light hit that 5,000-meter-high mountain, and thus instantly split and was broken down into countless stones. Interwoven with the moonlight, a full moon-shaped circle of light like the moon god's sharp blade quickly flew to the mountain, crushed it into innumerable broken stone pieces, and thus made it collapse instantly. A horrible oppressing pressure pressed down from that beautiful silhouette, enveloping everyone. The moonlight in the sky hastily condensed and congregated at that shadow, making her momentum soar crazily and endlessly. The faces of the group of Jiu Shao and Yu Qin were suddenly discolored. They looked at that beautiful silhouette with fear. Want to destroy my three gods sect? Are you ready to receive your own sect's consequences? The pretty silhouette was vaguely floating in the moonlight. The voice was clear but cold, containing a cruel and frightening tone, clearly showing a threat. 6 God Realm warriors all quieted down. Shiyang is not in the Three Gods sect. If you really want a war, then we are willing to serve you, being surrounded with the moonlight, that beautiful silhouette coldly said. Demon Dwellers' threats have not been solved yet, but you still want to destroy our Three Gods sect. And then you assume that you are those who can save the Endless Sea. It is ridiculous. After having finished talking, that appealing silhouette turned into a streak of moonlight and left. The sun god Tang Yuan sneered coldly and said to the people of Jiu Shao's group, "It is my honor to introduce to you, the moon god, Ouyang Lushuang. She has just entered the god realm not long ago. Before that, she had absorbed the 1,000-year moonlight and had been able to integrate the moon power of the ether. In this vast endless sea, except for Cao Qiudao and Yang Yitian, I am afraid that no one can match her strength. If you don't believe it, you can try." After having finished his words, without concerning with the horrified look on the faces of Jiu Shao's group, Tang Yuan rode the flame unicorn, turning into streaks of sunlight, and quickly left. The 6 people, including Jiu Shao, Yu Qin, Qingming, the Queen of Sky, the King of Earth, and Dong Fangju, looked at each other, and then shifted their eyes to the high mountain that had just collapsed, all quieted down with grimaces on their faces. The Dark Demon Area. Fierce, towering white bone columns blockaded the young Tian Emperor, making his skin all disappear. Standing on the bone stage inside the formation technique, young Tian Emperor had become a blood-dripping skeleton, which had only tendons attaching it to the skeleton. He looked terrible while his face was a mix of blood and flesh. It looked like he had been tortured to death. There was a white bones Dharma body standing next to the bone stage. At this moment, that white bones Dharma body spoke up, "Young Tian Emperor, do you want to feel more comfortable?" On the bone stage, young Tian Emperor's eyes, which were now only bare sockets without skin or flesh, were still just as bright and sparkling as before. He calmly looked at that white bones Dharma body and then said, "You are just wasting your time." Bozun revealed a cold smile. "This is your last chance. The Corpse Soul Bridge will be completed in several days. In 3 days, Kaiyang's and my real body will officially step into the Endless Sea. In a maximum of 15 days, the 3 great dark kings of the underworld will also enter the Endless Sea. By that time, the Endless Sea's people will be in misery, and it will become the paradise of demon and dark dwellers." Young Tian Emperor's eyes finally revealed a glint of terrified light. His bloody face slightly shivered, but he still didn't say anything. "Young Tian Emperor, you are very good at playing tricks. I don't know what kind of tricks you used to help the Yang family stay hidden in the demon area. I have been searching around but couldn't find anything. If it weren't because you had this arrangement, there wouldn't be a way for them to prevent my soul consciousness from finding them just by relying on their own ability," Bazun snorted. "For 1,000 years, the Yang family has always gone in and out of the 4th demon area. The time I have stayed here is even longer than our time in the Endless Sea. My understanding of this demon area is not less than yours. Even you, Bozun, still don't know there are some strange areas in this land." Young Tian Emperor proudly smiled and said, Even if I die, as long as they follow my orders, you will never find them. The area that you explored last time is just a fake one that I set up. After going there, perhaps you suffered quite of a loss. A flame rose up in the sockets of the Whitebone's Dharma body. That's right. We thought that we found the Yang family's hiding place but then realized that it was a trap. Many of my men were killed, but thanks to their death, the progress of building the Corpse Soul Bridge has been accelerated. As you know, I cannot kill my own family members for the Corpse Soul Bridge. Because of your arrangement, the completion of the bridge is getting much closer. I actually should thank you. Yang Tian Emperor's eyes changed afterward. You have a good grandson. That little rascal Shi Yang has caused us many troubles in the Endless Sea. He has even cut off one of Ma Chidun's arms. I don't know what you have done to that brat so that he, with his Earth Realm cultivation base, could injure Ma Chidun who had the boundless demon saber in his hand. Bozun beamed a cold smile and continued, however, it is in the past. Once my real body enters the Endless Sea, the only pawn you have left will easily be killed. Your successor will have his soul scattered. Cut off Ma Chidun's arm? Yang Tian Emperor's eyes brightened, and he suddenly burst into laughter. So after all, it is not a waste to spend the immortal blood for him. He is really the lucky star of the Yang family. I had known that there were some mysterious things in his body, but I never thought that he could be exceptionally outstanding like this. Ha ha ha, brilliant kid. It seems that I still underestimate him. That little rascal is the same as you, making enemies everywhere. Currently, not only are we searching for him but forces in the Endless Sea are also hunting him down. I have heard that he has escaped the siege of Qingming, the Queen of Sky, and the King of Earth. Moreover, he has injured the Queen of Sky severely. This brat is too much like you. He doesn't care about life and death or letting someone in his eyes. Bozun looked excited. Unfortunately, as for human beings, that characteristic is nothing different from bringing the perdition. We can obviously imagine his outcome. Human beings don't respect strong top-class warriors or potential youths. It is your greatest sorrow. A sign of sadness gleamed in Yang Tian Emperor's eyes. He nodded. Yes, I know how those people are. I hope he can have my luck this year and overcome all the bad things. If he doesn't die this time, his achievement in the future will surely be much more than mine. Ha ha ha, those kinds of people like Qingming, Fan Xiongyun, and the King of Earth used to conceal when seeing me before. I really want to see them being pursued everywhere they go and killed by Shi Yang. Ha ha ha, I do believe that day will come. Arrogant. Bozun snorted coldly, you just wait and see. In a maximum of 1.5 years, I am sure I will bring that kid's head to you. As soon as he finished his words, flames inside the Whitebone's Dharma's pupils disappeared. Bozun's host soul had left. Yang Tian Emperor kept silent for a long while before revealing a faint smile and muttering, good kid. Wait a little bit more. We will see each other very soon. In this world, who can really confine me? Chapter 362, The Strange Land. Chapter 362, The Strange Land. Shi Yang sat on the wooden boat spending sleepless nights trying to perceive the northern dipper net, immersing his mind in deep thought. He always used his star martial spirit to connect with the 7 stars of the Big Dipper, and then borrowed the force from the 7 stars of the Big Dipper to condense into the northern dipper net. Gradually, he had a deeper understanding of the creation of the northern dipper net. Within 3 minutes, he could borrow the star power to condense 7 meteorites out of the northern dipper net. Once the condensation of the northern dipper net was successful and he could create the spiritual connection with star power, he could then comfortably control and attack any target he wished. Once the 7 meteorites collided with each other and burst out, the power generated was enough to injure the Sky Realm warrior severely. Although their power was no match for the combination of the 3 living forms, the Ice-Cold Flame, the Holy Spirit God, and the Earth Flame, he could freely use it without worrying that it would drain out. The most important thing was that he somehow didn't feel the current northern dipper net at its ultimate form. Shi Yang had a premonition that the more profound his comprehension of the meaning of the stars was, the more powerful the northern dipper net would be. One day, the wooden boat suddenly entered a dark, boundless sea area. The strange and mysterious scene around had woken him up. Raising his head to look at the grey misty fog, he felt the peculiarity. He then suddenly released his soul consciousness to observe his surroundings. As soon as Xiang's soul consciousness left his sea of consciousness, it was instantly tied up as if mud was binding it. It didn't dissipate, but it couldn't reflect the surrounding environment to the sea of consciousness either. In this sea area, the murky fog shrouded over his head like a huge cage, which seemed to have strange magic that prevented any warrior who entered this area from using his soul consciousness to sense the situation. With a slight change in his face, Xiang rested his mind and meditated. He then suddenly realized that the connection between the star martial spirit and the stars in the sky had been cut off. He no longer felt the power of the stars in the sky, and he couldn't borrow that power to look through the misty fog. He thus figured out where he was. The dark magnetic noxious mist. It was the extreme eastern edge of the endless sea, which was the most mysterious and evil sea area, enveloped by a thick fog for billions of years. Inside this dark magnetic noxious mist, soul consciousness couldn't work. Other powers of the heaven and earth were also affected by this dark magnetic field and thus had no effect here. This mysterious sea area could influence warriors' souls, making them fall into strange fantasies. Heaven and earth aura didn't exist here either. Standing on the wooden boat, closing his eyes to sense around for a while, Xiang was eventually certain that he had come to his desired destination. On the Sun Island, Xia Xinyan used to tell him about both mysterious and strange things in the dark magnetic noxious mist. She said that behind the dark magnetic noxious mist was the center of the Grace mainland, where many mighty beasts dwelled. Many strange treasures of heaven and earth had disappeared, and many mysterious secrets existed here. It was a good place for warriors to cultivate themselves in following the dark path. The current situation of the endless sea was very complicated. Warriors from all over were searching for his whereabouts. After the division of the three living forms, his real realm was only the Nirvana realm. Although he was confident that he could endure the Sky Realm warriors, he couldn't withstand God Realm warriors. Therefore, he had wisely decided to avoid the danger for now and not participate in the chaos in the endless sea. He wanted to enhance his body strength, and thus he was determined to go to the dark magnetic noxious mist before his mutation was complete. On the one hand, he wanted to take advantage of the dark magnetic noxious mist's environment to sharpen his own strength. On the other hand, he hoped that he could find Xia Xinyan. Previously, when he and Xia Xinyan had separated, Xia Xinyan had gone with Yi Zhongfeng and Lin Yhe, who were from the dark magnetic noxious mist. He had a premonition that Xia Xinyan was still staying with them in the dark magnetic noxious mist. Hence, he came here with the hope that he could see his lover again. The wooden boat was moving slowly on the sea. Quietly sensing around, Xiang's face gradually changed. His pupils glinted with surprise. Without heaven and earth aura and under the impact of the dark magnetic noxious mist, other forces of heaven and earth couldn't exist in this noxious mist. So, if he consumed all of his profound qi, how could he supplement them? To attain profound qi, it required heaven and earth aura. With that thought, Xiang shuddered and hurriedly sent his spirit into the blood vein ring and took a high-graded profound crystal. Earlier that year, before entering the chasm battlefield, young Luo had brought hundreds of high-graded profound crystals and given them to him. He still kept these pure crystals in the blood vein ring, but because his mystery martial spirit could recover its power through murder, he rarely used these pure crystals. However, when entering such a strange place like the dark magnetic noxious mist where heaven and earth aura didn't exist, he suddenly remembered the pure crystals in the blood vein ring. Holding a chunk of pure crystal in his hand, Xiang activated his power, trying to absorb heaven and earth aura inside it. Strange things happened. The heaven and earth auras that had just been taken out of the pure crystal were influenced by the dark magnetic noxious mist. They evaporated instantly, not able to turn into condensed aura for him to absorb. Not effective. Xiang's face became dignified. The idea of leaving the dark magnetic noxious mist appeared in his mind. According to Xia Xinyan, there were various kinds of strange and dangerous things in the dark magnetic noxious mist where beasts raged fiercely. In this place, the only thing he could rely on was the force in his body. If he couldn't supplement profound qi, he would consume all of them really soon. If things kept going like this, he would be exhausted sooner or later and have no way to survive. Hence, he had to consider things more carefully. While he was hesitating, he suddenly raised his head looking around and immediately realized that he seemed to be lost. There were no sun, moon, or stars to identify the directions here. Surrounding him was the dark sea without any obstacles, reefs or islands. And the seawater under his feet was not calm. He bowed his head to look and realized that the water flow kept changing, and thus his boat kept moving. He didn't know how many times his boat had changed directions. In this case, even if he wanted to go back, he was uncertain that he could find the same way to return. Thus, there was only one way, which was going to continue forward, going further inside this area, reaching the center of the Grace mainland. Xiang forced a wry smile and subconsciously shook his head. As God's will was so, it seemed that returning was now impossible. He then had to continue moving forward, hoping to see the mysteries that could surprise him inside the mist. Thinking in silence for a while, he became relaxed and tried to adapt to the current situation. He sat down, no longer sending his profound chi to the boat, but instead, let the flow of water drive it freely. Without wasting his soul consciousness and profound chi, he held his breath, looked straight ahead, while calmly waiting, being aware of any special circumstances. Without the sun, moon, stars, or concept of time, all he could do was just sit still and let the boat flutter freely on the sea without any idea of where he was heading. One day later, Xiang's eyes brightened up. His wooden boat suddenly floated up into the air and slowly flew forward. The strange thing was he wasn't using any force. In the thick misty fog ahead, he could vaguely see a huge black shadow. This shadow was suspended in the air like a magnificent mountain, which gave people a strange, insecure feeling. With a tense mind, Xiang was fully cautious. His eyes flashed up, looking at the huge black shadow ahead. He didn't know what it was. The wooden boat slowly approached as the silhouette of the shadow gradually became clearer. It was a mountain indeed. This mountain was hundreds of miles high, strangely floating above the sea, suspended in the air. There were plants, trees, flowers, but no beasts and other creatures. It was unknown where this mountain came from. It kept floating in the sky like an air balloon, not seemingly affected by gravity. Xiang was extremely astonished. Quietly sensing around, he immediately realized that there was no gravity here. Not only that, but the sea under his feet also emitted a faint gray smoke which seemed to have some force that made the wooden boat fly up to the sky. He instantly decided to leave the boat, and after having consumed just a little bit of profound chi, he already arrived on the mountain peak. Sitting atop the mountain, Xiang looked down, observing this miraculous place. A colorful light beam suddenly flew over from the mountain in front of him. Xiang watched attentively for a moment and realized that this beam of light had definitely been released from a warrior. According to the direction of where that light beam came from, he knew that the place was thousands of meters away. However, because of the ineffectiveness of his soul consciousness in this area, together with the thick fog, he couldn't see the warrior who had shot out that beam of light nor knew the opponent's cultivation base. He continued sitting for a while, observing the mountain, and then thought that he should go and check what or who it was. He didn't understand much about the dark magnetic noxious mist, so if he could meet that warrior, he would have many of his questions answered. With that thought in mind, he immediately used his profound chi to move toward its direction with moderate speed. Chapter 363, 3 Males and 2 Females. Chapter 363, 3 Males and 2 Females. A 1,000-meter-high mountain was suspended above the sea. A dazzling light beam dashed over from behind the mountain, accompanied by soft sounds, which were like the beasts roaring in the distance. Xiang stopped moving to watch that beam of light with cold eyes and carefully observe it. He then realized that the light contained extraordinary power, and the warrior behind the mountain should have the cultivation base in the 2nd or 3rd sky of Nirvana realm, or maybe in the sky realm. He secretly asked himself how intimidating that realm was, and at the same time, he tried to observe if there were God realm warriors or not. After that, he then felt more secure and quietly moved forward. Without gravity, when his body moved, It looked like a soft, elegant willow dashing forward with breakneck speed. In only 3 minutes, he already arrived at behind the mountain. Hiding under a cliff, he quietly stuck his head out and observed the fight behind the mountain. 5 warriors were holding various secret treasures, violently fighting with 3 golden eye snow dragons. The group consisted of 3 males and 2 females. All of them were still very young, around 20 years old. The 2 girls had beautiful, slender bodies as well as profound cultivation bases which seemed to be in the sky realm. The 3 males had sturdy bodies and prominent appearances. 2 of them had blonde hair, blue eyes, and had the 3rd sky of Nirvana realm cultivation base. They should be brothers, as they looked quite alike. The other one was a little bit younger, his face was long and pointed, his eyes were cold, and he also had the 3rd sky of Nirvana realm cultivation base. 3 males and 2 females together fought with 3 golden eye snow dragons. They were taking the upper hand in this battle. There was another golden eye snow dragon's body on the ground on the side. Blood was dripping out from its head. Its demon crystal should have been taken by those people. Golden eye snow dragon was the 6th level beast, which could be compared to a Nirvana realm warrior. It had great strength and a sturdy build. Ordinary weapons could hardly injure it, and thus, it was tough to deal with. These 5 warriors with their outstanding abilities had jointly killed 1 golden eye snow dragon. As for the remaining 3 golden eye snow dragons, one of them was severely injured. Its tail had been cut off with blood and flesh blended stickily. It was continually roaring and resisting. As he watched the fight in front of him, he realized that the 3 golden eye snow dragons didn't seem to be able to withstand the others' attacks any longer. They would soon be killed like the other dead golden eye snow dragon. It was unknown where these 5 young warriors came from and how they could have such a profound cultivation base. Together with sparkling secret treasures in their hands, they didn't look like ordinary people. Xiang had been watching them for a while, and he was secretly aghast as he realized that the martial technique of these 5 warriors was quite mysterious. They were certainly 1 level higher than the outstanding young warriors in the Endless Sea. Fragmented blade. The female in a silk gown with a piece of sapphire tied on her waist suddenly shouted. The many sword lights that shot out from her jade-like hand were snow-white, bone-chilling, and very dangerous. They instantly pierced through 1 golden eye snow dragon's body. The 5-meter-tall tight long S was abruptly stagnant in the air while its body emitted beautiful lights, splitting into different blocks. It had been slashed to death without shedding a drop of blood. Seeing that golden eye snow dragon killed, the remaining 2 were finally panicked, ran away in 2 different directions. One of them was severely injured and blocked by the 4 people. Various attacks were cast out, striking and throwing that golden eye snow dragon back to the sky. The other golden eye snow dragon, which was not wounded, let out a roar, dashing toward the place where Xiang was hiding with breakneck speed. The female in the silk gown suddenly swung her arms, leaped up, and quickly chased after that golden eye snow dragon like a cyclone. The distance between her and that golden eye snow dragon was getting closer. Xiang stood up with his slightly changed face. That golden eye snow dragon seemed to see him, suddenly roared, and opened its mouth, bursting out a stream of icy silver light. Stop it! As the female, who was chasing that golden eye snow dragon, saw Xiang hiding there, she quickly called him out for help. Xiang's face darkened. When he saw that silver light approaching, he raised his hand, blasting the life seal. 7 handprints merged into one and struck the golden eye snow dragon. Boom! The golden eye snow dragon was bombarded by the life seal and bounced backward. The icy silver light that dashed toward Xiang was melted by the heat of the earth flame and disappeared, leaving no trace. Right after being hit by the life seal, the last golden eye snow dragon was then attacked by the girl's fragmented blade even before it could stabilize its body. It was split into 16 blocks of meat floating in the air and fell away slowly. Xiang's eyes flashed up, staring at that golden eye snow dragon's body. He realized that after it had died, those blocks of meat seemed to be affected by gravity and thus instantly fell on the mountain. The girl who had used a secret technique to behead the golden eye snow dragon quickly flew over. Her fingertips shot out a slender beam of silver light toward that golden-eye snow dragon's head and then took out a sparklingly bright demon crystal. While she had been casting out her attacks to kill this golden-eye snow dragon, the other 4 warriors had also succeeded in exterminating the other injured one and harvesting 1 demon crystal. A while later, the 5 warriors gathered in together atop the mountain, looking toward Shiyang. Shiyang was standing on a cliff, observing with knitted eyebrows. He hesitated a little bit before moving toward those 5 warriors. He stopped when he was about 20 meters away from them, secretly on the alert. "Where are you from?" The girl in the silk gown, who was quite tall, squinted her eyes looking at him and asked while her hands were still playing with the demon crystal. "The endless sea." Shiyang contemplated for a moment before calmly replying. "Endless sea?" The girl seemed to be a little hazed looking at the other beautiful girl next to her and asked gently, "See, have you ever heard of that place?" Through the dark magnetic noxious mist toward the west, it is said that there is a sea area where plenty of warriors gather. It seems to be the endless sea. The girl whose name was Sea wore many colorful bracelets. Every time she swung her arms, crisp and sweet sounds resounded. She revealed a faint smile with a slightly despising look on her face and said, "ROI, the endless sea is a barbaric place. Although there are some powerful warriors there, it is still far less than our divine land. I have heard that the ancestors in the endless sea were warriors who couldn't develop in divine land, and thus they had crossed the sea to the endless sea, starting to live and form their forces there until now." "Ah," the girl named Roya slightly nodded without saying anything else. The 3/3 sky of Nirvana realm men threw a disdained look at Shiyang. One of them, who was wearing a cold face, also whispered, "Turns out he is an immigrant from an undeveloped area." Shiyang arched his eyebrows but didn't say anything. He was actually surprised. In his eyes, the endless sea was a vast area. A lot of warriors there were much stronger than those in the Merchant Union. Unexpectedly, in these people's eyes, the endless sea was just a place of barbarians and laggards. After having thought a while, he suddenly said, "Are you from the center land of the Grace mainland on the east of the dark magnetic noxious mist?" The 2 girls displayed their disdain, slightly smiled but didn't say anything. The other 3/3 sky of Nirvana realm men proudly nodded with superior manners. Shiyang had originally wanted to check with these 3 men about the situation around. However, as he saw their arrogant attitude, he felt disgusted, and the intention of talking with them had soon gone. He nodded with a cold face, clasped his hands and said, "See you again." After talking, he turned around and walked away. "Wait a minute," Roya suddenly spoke up. Shiyang shuddered, but his face didn't change. He was secretly well prepared. If something bad happened, he would immediately start to take actions first. The 5 of them, with high cultivation base, miraculous martial techniques, as well as secret treasures in their hands, were all outstanding talents like Yi Zhongfeng and Lin Yhe, those whom he admired. If they really had wicked intentions, he had to use all of his power to be able to escape. Having come to this world for only 1 or 2 days, he understood well the danger of this place. He clearly knew that a powerful warrior here could kill someone else without any reasons. "What is it?" Shiyang asked as he turned his head around, revealing a smile like he didn't take any precaution, and looked at her with calm eyes. "You helped me earlier, so I give you a part of this demon crystal as a reward." Aya's words were simple and gentle. While she was talking, a dagger emerged in her hand, cutting the demon crystal into 3 parts. She then snapped her fingers, and 1 piece of the demon crystal flew toward Shiyang. Swoosh. "Roya, each demon crystal in this dark magnetic noxious mist is very precious. Why are you wasting it?" It turned out that was the man with cold temperament. "Borge, my father has taught me that when you owe someone a favor, you always have to repay it." Roya slightly squinted and said with a cold tone, "We should give him that part of the demon crystal. Without him, no one could have killed that golden-eye snow dragon. It is fair. Do you have a problem with what I am doing?" Right after she had finished her words, a dangerous aura suddenly was emitted from her body. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.